And I need to.
Show caption.
Sure why that is. There we go. Okay, we are live and recording. Go ahead, Madam Chair.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council. It's 10:02 a.m. on January 31st, 2023. Welcome, everybody, to this cold day in Texas. Let me call roll. Dr. Halbauer.
Stephen Hallbauer. I'm with the Licensed Professional Counseling Board as a public member.
Thank you, Jenny. Dr. Smith.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Janine Smith, and I am the professional member from the Texas State Board of Examiners for Marriage and Family Therapists. And good to see everybody today.
Thank you. Dr. Cartwright.
Morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Cartwright. I'm on the Psych Board, professional member, clinical psychologist.
Mr. Brumley.
Good morning. It's Brian Brumley. I'm the professional member from the Social Work Board.
Thank you. Dr. Taylor.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Christopher Taylor. I'm the Vice Chair of the Licensed Professional Counseling Board.
Mr. Bielamowitz.
Hello, this is John Belamowitz, Chair of the Psychology Board and public member.
Thank you. And Ms. Moore.
Diane's the Psych Board Administrator.
Oh, she's administrator. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I'd like to welcome a new member, Dr. Skoma, Anthony Skoma, representing that. Well, I'll let you tell him. Dr. Skoma, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Canseco. Yeah, I'm Anthony Skoma, and I'm privileged to serve as the Vice Chair of the Texas State Board of Examiners of Marriage and Family Therapy therapists, and was elected to this role on Friday, and was told that my esteemed predecessor would not be here today. So I am playing catch up, and you'll, I'm sure, be generous with me if I take an observer's role today and kind of get to know everybody. But I've been serving for a number of years. I actually came on to the MFTA board right after the infamous sunset process. And we were, in fact, I met Dr. Smith. We first met during a long day of waiting to testify at the Capitol on behalf of just this process that we are now sitting in. And I'm so pleased to see what this has resulted in. It was what many of us hoped and dreamed it would be. And it's just an honor to be here now. Quick background: I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, Northwestern Hills. Technically, my father was the mayor there. He would be very disappointed if I said Fort Worth. But grew up in Northwestern Hills, came to the University of Texas, and was called to ministry while there. There's some jokes in there somewhere, but wound up going to seminary. And I have degrees, I like to say, from the pagans, the Pentecostals, and the Presbyterians. So I've got a myriad of worldviews that helped me here. We planted a church here in Austin 20 years ago. My doctorate is in historical theology. Specifically, my dissertation was on the development of Trinitarian theology through the lens of Murray Bowen's emotional systems theory. So I'm well versed in the foundations of our MFTA process, and I believe in that very much. I've been married this year, will be 29 years, to my lovely wife, Deanna, who's a CPA and is buried in tax season now, getting into that. And two incredible children. My daughter's a junior at the University of Texas. She is this semester studying abroad. She's international relations, and she is at the University of Glasgow. So she's making fun of us today for canceling school in this frigid weather that she calls a Tuesday. So she's loving it over there. And then my son is a high school senior here at Bowie High School in Austin, and hoping to study economics. He's been accepted into the University of Texas, but his dream is University of Chicago. And so we'll find that out in March. So it's a pleasure to be here with you. And I want to say I do not, Mr. Francis, my predecessor, will not be easily replaced. I do not pretend to bring his business acumen and knowledge of statistics and things into the table. I am trying to bring his bow tie today in honor. I told our board I'd like to be called George V, if that would be okay. But anyway, I do share his commitment to the citizens of Texas, and look forward to serving them as a public member here with you all, and looking forward to getting to know you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and please tell him he'll be missed. And on the public, I'd like to thank George for his years of service. I'm Gloria Canseco. I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and I was appointed by the governor as the chair in 2019.
Correct, yeah.
In 2019, and I am CEO of San Antonio Christian Dental Clinic, and we provide dental care for low-income and homeless adults. So that having been said, welcome everyone, and I think we have a quorum. Do we need to certify that?
We
formally?
do. Well, we've got a quorum. We can proceed forward.
Good. Let's start with 3, and I've gotten a little preview of this, and so before anything, I want to applaud the staff and especially our executive director at the Behavioral Health Executive Council. I think you're going to be truly pleased to see what all has gotten done. Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, the first thing on the agenda is going to be our quarterly performance measures or updates on that. I've got the Q1 performance measures for fiscal year 23, which is what we're in now. They're really good. I mean, I'm not going to belabor or beat this horse too long, but just to kind of give you an idea of how things have improved, we're looking at application processing times in the mid-30s. We're looking at average complaint resolution times of 200 and what is it? Let me see if I can. I've got so many screens up, I have to remember which way I move the cursor to get to them now. 288 days, which is a drastic improvement over really anything that the board's psych board or anybody had, before BHEC came onto the scene. So staff are doing, everything is clicking along smoothly. Everything is working very well. The performance measures that we're out of sync on or that we're not hitting, it's because those the targets are wrong. And we're either doing vastly better than what the target is, or the target was based off of faulty data. So what I'm trying to say is don't put a lot of stock in the performance measures that we're not hitting, because those measures, the targets themselves are wrong. And we're updating that in this new coming biennium. They'll be updated to more accurately reflect where we are. But and one other kind of kudos to enforcement staff. One of our performance measures is what percentage of complaints or how many complaints are resolved within 6 months. And it's like 60+% of our complaints are now resolved in under 6 months. That was pretty much unheard of at Psych Board and pretty much unheard of at the boards at HHSC. So that is a massive improvement. I cannot really stress that enough. So everything is clicking along smooth. Of course, you guys have got the numbers there, and I'll let those stand on their own. You guys, I'll try to answer any questions you might have. If there are any. Let's see.
Any questions? We're really delighted. For those of you who don't tune in often, this is a remarkable acceleration compared to what we were looking at just last meeting before. You've really done a great job.
It's been in the past, I'd say past 2 quarters where we've really seen a significant turnaround. And candidly, I think now we're at cruising altitude is what it is. Up until now, we've been climbing, and now we're at cruising altitude and everything's working. So it's smoothed out. There's always going to be little hiccups and bumps. You can't run an organization this size without, having to have a few hiccups and bumps, but we're pivoting, we're adjusting where we need to. Just to kind of give you some example of what we're doing. Right now, I'm looking at implementing a system on our phones that will allow us to track how long people set on hold. Who calls, it'll track what numbers ping into the system, whether or not they connected, how long they set in the queue hold, that type of thing, so that we can kind of address any concerns that come up or accusations that come up about, well, I called because I can look at it and go, no, you didn't. You called once and you sat on there for 10 seconds and hung up. I think that's going to nip a lot of that kind of stuff in the bud. So we're looking at implementing that, just those types of things. And we're going to talk about one here or later on today, and that's the CE broker. We're continuing to evolve and improve where we can. I think we've made a lot of the big moves that we can make, and now we're down to more medium and small size moves that we can make. But there's never going to be a point in time where we stop moving. You can ask my staff that have been with me since Psych Board. I never quit moving. I often get fussed at for outrunning my supply lines in terms of I exhaust them and they're like, you got to chill out and wait and just let us catch our breath because I'm going to constantly be pushing forward on this stuff. But so don't ever think you're settled in and that you're going to get a meeting where you're not going to have to deal with something or another, because there's always going to be something on your plate that we'll always be trying to improve on. But anyway, that's all I've got to say on that. And if anybody's got
Thank
any
you.
questions? Janine, do you have your hand up?
I did. Thanks for recognizing me. I don't see that this is listed in what we're going to be talking about, but I just did want to kind of follow up and ask, how close are we to running at capacity with all of our jobs being filled for BHEC for their staff positions?
I think we've got 68 FTE slotted to us, and I think we're employing 59 right now. I think we've got one more coming on board tomorrow. So we should be at 60. So we're doing all of that with 58 to 60 employees. We've got to where we were with less than 60, that we're only hitting the 60 now, but we probably had, 55 to 59 is kind of what it's taken to get us where we are now.
Okay. Can you see that as your staff, as you're able to fill staff, that your performance levels, sorry, thought I had that on mute, that your performance levels are also rising because now we're getting to be more fully staffed?
Oh, absolutely. It absolutely helps. Another area where it helps is the ability to cross train, and then you can plug and fill in gaps. Like we lost one of our social workers, Joan. She moved back to Idaho or Iowa to be with her family. Her husband got transferred up there. So she moves. Because we've cross-trained so extensively within each of the programs, we're able to just kind of plug and play. We're also beginning to do, Mari may already be doing it, is cross-training between the programs. So that if you had some major deficit happen in, say, social work or psych, you can pluck out somebody from one of the other programs and kind of do a gap fill. Now, that's really hard to do. You're not going to be able to do that and achieve the same level of efficiency that we have now, but it's a good stopgap measure until you can get somebody hired and trained in there. So that's kind of the tactic we're taking there.
That's awesome. I think that just goes to show, I'm just reiterating what you already said, Director Spinks, in that now that BHEC has been created and now we're getting fully staffed, how much faster all these things are happening, the licensing, oversight for the state, all that kind of stuff. So I just want to applaud the BHEC staff and thank you for creating this.
That's what you pay us for. So we're trying to get it done. We're trying to do a good job for y'all. We're trying to do a good job for the state. We want folks to feel like they're kind of getting their money's worth whenever they call us. Now I recognize I'm not going to be so arrogant to say that we do everything right. I know we don't. So anybody that's listening out there, I'm not saying we're perfect and we've got warts on us just like anybody else does, but I would say we've come leaps and bounds from where we all were prior to BHEC. So anyway, the next item on the agenda is going to be the budget. I don't really have anything to say on it other than, I just always tell everybody, look at the percentage of the budget remaining versus the percentage of the year remaining. You'll see we got 67% of the year remaining, 65% of the budget. That 2%, nothing to worry about. That's going to even out over the fiscal year. So I can't remember what Jenny told me why that 2% difference was, but there's a good reason and the accountants know it. That's what I'm going to have to tell you on that one.
That's low percentage.
Yeah, it's not anything to worry about. Next item is going to be the licensing functions and the enforcement functions. The one thing I want to talk to you about on the licensing, we've already kind of branched into it, was I talked about the phone system we're going to use. We've also implemented use of something called Jabber, which is a virtual telephone. Up until now, our receptionists have had to be here in the office in Austin. Now, that's problematic for recruiting and retaining receptionists because it's the lowest paid position in the agency and they have to come into the office in downtown Austin. That is incredibly difficult to recruit somebody for that. So what we're trying to do is create it so that we can hire people that can work from home part of the time or that can be in a completely different part of the state. We're talking Lubbock, El Paso, Brownsville. I mean, with this, we're really not limited geographically. The only problem with going that far out is training, being able to get them trained. You know, they might have to come in for a little while and get them trained, but that is going to expand. I think that's going to aid in our retention for receptionists. We're also looking at doing, and this is something probably the stakeholders, the public's going to like. The way we've collected proposed rules and stuff up to date has been probably fine from the public's perspective, but it's incredibly difficult and wonky from the staff side. It's difficult to gather all the public comments that come in, bundle them all up, and make sure they stay with that proposed rule as it moves through the different rulemaking process in BHEC, which all of you know, sitting on the board, you know, it's a very complicated process. So what I'm doing effective immediately with with whatever rules get proposed today, we are going to set up a specific page on BHEC's homepage where we're going to publish all the proposed rules. You're not going to have to go to the Texas Register to find these proposed rules. You're going to get a very clean copy. It's going to be basically the same thing that you guys see, just a very clean copy of the rules showing the strike throughs, additions, or what have you. And then we're also going to have a link to a form that will collect public comments on that specific rule. One of the problems that we have had in the past is that when people submit public comment, they don't name the rule, and they may not be specific as to what they're talking about, or they'll jumble comments about one rule with another, and it becomes very difficult to decipher, hey, what are you wanting to see us do, or what's your real gripe or contention? And so with this, we're going to be able to say, look, if you're going to comment on 463.12, here's the comment form, fill it out, and it will log your comment in a spreadsheet, which you guys saw what the spreadsheet looked like today that I sent you from the one public comment we got, written public comment for the meeting. It's going to look like that. It will gather it all, and it will keep it all bundled together for us so that we're not at risk of losing a comment through all the shifting around. The comments have to follow this rule through the process, and so that's where it gets difficult. So we're gonna do that, and that should cut down on the risk of missing comments. It will cut down on staff's time and having to manage it, because I know y'all heard me say it, but for the public's edification, the rulemaking process is extremely complex here from the staff side. I know y'all think it's complex from your side, but when you get on our side, it gets really nasty. Trying to track all this stuff. So we're trying to simplify it as best we can. So for the public, start looking for a new web page on our homepage. I've got it created. I don't have the guts of it built, the substance of it done yet. But you're going to see a new web page where it says proposed rules. We'll set all those out. There will be a link that you can click on and say, I want to comment on that rule. You click on that link, drop your comment in, done. It's collected and it's saved. We'll make sure it gets to the right spots. And then that cuts down on the workload on us. So that's something that we're doing. As far that's really all I had on the licensing. As far as the update on the enforcement goes, the one thing I'm probably most proud of, other than, I don't know, it's hard to say one thing. It's like saying which kid you like the most, I guess. But one thing I am proud of is the fact that we now have fewer than 400 pending complaints, folks. We came over here with 1,400 complaints from HHSC. Total across all the boards, you now have, I think, 380 something pending complaints. That's it. That's counting what has come in. That's counting what the few stragglers that are left over from what we call the backlog. There's a few that are like going to SOA. That is a massive improvement there. And it will get to the point where we're not really complaints aren't having to go into a queue. They are being investigated just the minute they come in. They're kind of being investigated as they come in. We're probably going to get to that. We've already exceeded where I thought we would be. I figured we were going to have kind of homeostasis between 400 and 500 pending complaints. Turns out I was wrong. Staff have kind of blown it out of the water. Enforcement staff have done a few things on their own. Turns out if you leave people alone and you just kind of give them an overarching goal and say, this is what I want, and you leave them alone, they'll come up with devices to get there on their own. You don't have to micromanage them. And that's what they've done. So, pat on the back because it's working. They're down to
pending cases are
less than 400 pending cases. So that's good. That's really all I have on that. on 3D. On 3E is just the agreed orders. I think there's a screw up in the agreed order on the MFTs. You've only got one page of the MFT order, and then there was a social work order that got mixed in with it, but that's neither here nor there. Well, though, that's just a screw up on our end. The orders aren't messed up. That just messed that up when I was putting the board packet together. We'll get those published on Versa here pretty soon. SIPAC, Patrick, do you have any updates on SIPAC?
Not too much. It's up to 33 states fully enacted, and there's 2 that have enacted but are not effective yet. And there's pending legislation in a number of other states, but though I won't count those until they actually pass it. So
Yeah. I'll tell y'all, I've got to go to, I'm leaving for DC next week to work on the social work compact again. We hit a little bit of a snag on that one, so I'm gonna go back out there and see if we can work on it some more. I still haven't heard anything on the counseling compact. No bills have been filed. Haven't heard anything from any staffers or anything like that. So I really don't know what the status of that is. Let's see.
That was 3H, the bill, is that 3H that you were talking about? SIPAC, or is that just
3F.
3F?
Yeah, 3F was SIPAC.
I got mixed up here.
Yeah. 3G is the ad hoc standardization committee. I don't really have anything on that. We've kind of slowed that down since the legislature's in session right now. All my efforts are focused on that for the time being. The last thing the standardization committee said was we all kind of agreed that we would work on a set of guidelines for wrapping up or closing down a practice, some kind of standardized procedure or technique we could use for all the professions. So that's what our directive is when we have some time to work on it, is to start working on that. Ms. Smith?
Yeah, thanks for recognizing me. I just had a question on the 33 states that are in SIPAC. Are those posted anywhere that we could also look at?
sure you can.
They're on the website. Yeah. If you,
They're on y'all's website?
not on our website, but if you just kind of Google SIPAC enacting states,
Okay,
they'll pop right up and you can see them on. It'll show you like a separate page that has like pending legislation. Like I think like Rhode Island gets enacted. What is it like? I think that they moved that a month up, but I think it's Michigan and New York, I believe, are pending right now.
okay.
And
Awesome.
then, yeah,
Thank-
so but you can just basically get on their website and it's pretty easy to find.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Cartwright. I appreciate that.
The next item that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm not going to belabor it too long because it's pretty lengthy, and that's the bill list that I'm tracking. Right now, I'm tracking 97 bills that will either directly or indirectly affect the profession. The big ones that I'm not even gonna, I highlighted the ones for you in it that I think are probably going to be the biggest system shocks if they become law, like Click's bill, House Bill 139, certain, types of notice for certain proposed rules, that type of stuff. Cody Harrison has one. Chairman Franks from House Health, I think it's Public Health Committee, I think has one as well. There's a couple of those bills that deal with what the types of notice we have to give when we're proposing rules, or the types of rule review we have to do. And there's some pretty significant consequences if you don't do it right. The rule can be voidable. They're pretty significant. They carry some pretty significant consequences if you don't get it right. And so I'm really having to watch those to see where they go. There's a few on there that deal with like broadcasting and recording of meetings. Representative Howard, Senator Zaffarini have bills on that that are going to take a little bit of study. And that one from Zaffarini is going to take quite a bit of studying on my part. I've looked at it a couple of times, but I haven't been able to digest it all just yet. It seems like Senator Perry had one too that was going to be pretty significant. Representative Romero and Senator Zaffarini also have what used to be House Bill 3626. If y'all heard me talk about that last time, that's the licensure by endorsement rule or change, where if you're licensed MFT from out of state and you've got, if you're just licensed and in good standing, you can come in. We don't have to look at your supervised experience type requirements. Same for counseling, except for them, it's a 2 year, you have to have practiced for 2 years, And then the same for social work, but there you only have to practice for 1 year. You know, I wish it was all just one standard,
Right.
but hey, it's a half a loaf, I'll take it. It's still better than what we have now. That bill almost passed last time. It didn't fail because of anything to do with the bill. Everybody actually liked the bill. So I'm kind of hopeful that it's just gonna go the distance this time. And, you know, we'll see, but I think Zaffarini's bill is a kind of a low number on it too, which is usually a good sign. If it's a low number bill.
SB 47.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, so that's a pretty good sign that it's not SB 680, whatever, you know, it's way back there in the back.
You also highlighted the one that says relating to remote.
Yep, that was me that time.
That's
If I'd
okay.
been federal court, that'd have been a $500 fine.
Relating to remote meetings held under open just above 47,
Let's see, under.
page 17.
Yeah. That's the Zaffarini one that I was talking about. It's a very long bill. I'm gonna have to chew on that one some more. I don't quite know enough about it yet to speak intelligently on it, but I know it makes some pretty significant changes to, you know, how we do these types of meetings. So, I'm thinking between that bill or that bill would allow us to, like Chair Conseco could probably do the meeting at her house without having to be here and this open to the public. This would still have to be open to the public, but you could do it from your house without your home having to be open to the public.
Mhm.
I think I'm gonna have to look at that again, but, and that's one of the big problems with doing these types of meetings now is wherever the presiding member is, it has to be open. Kenley, it'd be a lot easier if it was you just offer a room. You know, the presiding member can be wherever they want to be, and you just have to offer a room where they can see everybody and hear everything that's going on. That would be a little bit easier on us, especially on days like this. But anyway, and then Senator Perry's got one that deals, Senator Perry and Senator Paxton both have bills that relate to the confidentiality of address and telephone numbers. Perry's is kind of a blanket, I think. I got to go back and read it again, but I think it just kind of blanketly says, hey, this stuff is not, you know, public information, whereas Senator Paxton's limits it to home address and telephone number. That's going to be a little more problematic in our database system. That's going to be a little more trouble. I'm having to work on a fiscal note on that one because it only affects home address and telephone number, and we really don't specify or make people identify what is a home address and what is a home telephone number. So that's the problematic part for us in our database. But that's it on the bills. Again, like I say, no counseling bill has been filed yet. And of course, no social work bill has been filed yet because we're still working on the draft of it. Janine?
Yes, I had a question on, and I haven't read it line by line as much, but on Hughes's bill, SB 490, that relates to itemization. How is that different than what we're already asked to do, Daryl?
I don't know, Janine. I know generally what you're talking about under federal law, the itemization requirement, or
Right.
yeah. I don't know.
Okay. Okay. I'll look into it more.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It may not be very different at all, but
Okay.
Hey, Daryl,
yes, sir.
are you hearing any sort of objections on the counseling bill, or is there just no traction?
No, sir. I haven't heard anything. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on over there with it. I really don't know. I'm hoping, I don't want to put them on the spot. I'm hoping whoever's from TCA, if they're going to talk here today, they might be able to give us a little insight as to what's going on, because since they're carrying the water on this, some state association gonna have to carry the water on this, whoever's carrying it, I'm hoping that they can kind of fill us in on it, because I haven't heard anything about it.
Okay, I haven't either. I was just wondering if maybe you had heard some rumors.
Yeah, I have not.
Okay, thank you.
All right, the next item up after the bills is going to be Chair Blumenz. I may need you to chime in on this one. It's the update about the EPPP Part 2. When Chair Blumenz and I attended ASPPB's annual meeting in October in DC, they announced, kind of dropped the bomb on us at the meeting, that they were now going to be requiring a second part to the EPPP they call it part 2.
And that's a testing instrument?
That's the national exam to get in. And they've given us till January of 2026 to implement that. John, feel free to jump in wherever you want.
Yeah, so we were standing there in the meeting and they announced that the EPPP 2, which is optional right now, and I forget the number of states who have adopted it. It's in the low single digits.
It's 7.
So, okay, thank you. All right, sorry, I lied. It's in the high single digits. But everyone's kind of taken a wait and see approach to it. And it originally, the idea of it, the concept of it was born out of the idea that we were getting rid of the oral exam and it was to replace that. Anyway, things obviously take time. You know, in the argument for it, they're saying that it's, you know, it's not another barrier to licensure. It's another test. I think it's clearly another license or another barrier. It's definitely going to be an additional cost, which is not yet ascertained, and that's not paid to us. That's paid to them. We just use their test. So we all found out about it all together when we were in the room, that's what the board of ASPPB had decided. And then the email went out, my phone buzzed, and I saw that they just announced it to the whole wide world of sports as well, of that decision. So the long and the short of it is that this is the board here, BHEC and TSBP. Those are the agencies and boards that are going to have to make a decision on this. There is not universal consensus. I'm being kind here. There's definitely not consensus on whether or not it's a good thing, and there's arguments from really all sides of the political spectrum. If you're a small government against occupational licensing generally kind of person, it represents another barrier. From more progressive places, there's a lot of concern about equity and how it applies to immigrant and minority populations. So I don't know where we go. We've gotten some pushback from stakeholders saying that, you know, don't adopt this. And right now we're not. We have no immediate action planned. So that is where we are. Daryl, have I missed anything there or anything?
No.
Punctuate.
The concern that I have, and we've shared this with some members of ASPPB, is that one of the key functions and one of the very purposes that this body was set up to do is to protect against any kind of anti-competitive barrier being put in place. And then one of the sole purpose behind the governor's regulatory compliance division is to do the same thing. They study anti-competitive issues and then they pass judgment on whether or not the public benefit is outweighed by the administrative burden of these new barriers. And my concern is we've gone, what, 3-4 years now without an oral exam, which this exam was intended to replace. And we haven't seen, I mean, the world's still spinning on its axis. Nothing has fallen off or broken. And now we're going to be, we kind of have a gun to our head sometimes, it feels like, of you got to implement this test if you want to continue using part 1, because we won't let you use part 1 unless you use part 2. But yet our role is to look at it and go, yeah, but we don't want to let, our job is to keep needless barriers from cropping up. And that's what the governor's office. So we're in this catch-22 here, and I don't know how to solve this problem. I don't know how this is going to shake out. I just know that we've got a mandate as the council. The governor's office will have a mandate. I'm not trying to speak for them, but that's what that division was set up to do, was to guard against anti-competitive or needless barriers. And
sorry, go ahead, keep going.
And then we've got this exam coming in, and candidly, I can't point to any data to support the need for it.
And who is the sponsoring agency for the tests?
ASPPB, the Association of State and Provincial Psychology Boards, which we are a member of. That's one of the reasons why well, I don't want, never mind, I won't say that, but
I'll say candidly here. I mean, this was a decision by the ASPPB board, which we elect the board. To me, this was the most consequential thing that came out of that meeting. And it was not voted on by the membership. It wasn't discussed by the membership. It was decided by the board and we all were informed of it just the same as everybody else.
And
And go ahead.
Are they purporting that it adds, some substantial credibility to those taking the test or passing the test? What's their? Did they explain that?
There's some meeting materials that in the packet, but to summarize, I mean, they're saying that we need a skills test. And that's what this is. My question, and Daryl already kind of alluded to it, is what problem are we solving here? Because there's a lot of problems right now that we need to tackle that are very clearly problems.
Mhm.
And if I'm asking the question, what is the clear problem that we're solving by adding this not insignificant layer of a barrier, not insignificant cost? What are we solving for here?
Mhm.
The answer to that question cannot be something in the abstract. It, in my
Right.
opinion, needs to be a concrete, hey, we've identified this as a problem and this test is definitely going to be the thing to solve it. No one has made that argument to me yet. And so that's what I'm looking for,
Has any
and I haven't heard it.
representative of the site board posed that question, like directly, like formally? Could we, that's my bottom line question. Could we as BHEC say, we need more information? Why are you doing this?
I've had those conversations.
Mhm.
I'm kind of saying it here, that message has been conveyed, not in an open forum. I haven't put anybody clearly on blast. This is probably the furthest that I've gone in publicly on it. I'm not opposed to that for sure. We have a mid-year meeting coming up. I'm not going to be going. One of our professional members is going,
Mhm.
and I'm sure we're going to talk about it. I'm sure it will be discussed more.
Yeah.
But that question, it's being discussed. We're not the only ones from what just the chatter that I've seen. I haven't had any direct conversations, but I'm pretty sure that I'm not the only one who's asking questions like this.
Is there anybody else find that offensive in any way? Is there any reason we shouldn't ask directly? So I'm just, I'm a get to business kind of person, but not everybody is. What's your opinion, Daryl? Or do you think that asking splat out, this is creating a barrier? Why would we be doing it?
I'm not sure. I think probably the more offline approaches are going to be more effective at addressing this particular issue right now. I know that we are not the only jurisdiction that's struggling with how to adapt or respond to this new mandate that's come down. And there are, I know there are other large jurisdictions, comparably in size to us that are struggling with it.
I just think offline is easier to ignore.
Well, Chair Canseco, by virtue of your questions right here, right now, in a public meeting on the record, I'm glad we're having this conversation because we don't have these conversations here in this forum in a vacuum for sure.
Am I doing it wrong then?
No,
Oh.
No, you're doing it right. This is why we have these meetings.
yeah,
And I think your questions are well placed. They're the same question I'm wrestling with because, clutch shift slightly here to something we're going to talk about later is that, in response to Uvalde, the psychology board has already started looking at every rule that we have and why is it there? And is it an effective and purposeful barrier that protects the public? And if so, then yes. And if not, why is it there? And if it is, but maybe it's cumbersome, how do we make it flow better? And so the legislature is already telling us to do that. To me, going straight forward and adopting this another barrier to entry with an additional cost would be thumbing, not even, beyond thumbing our nose. I think it flies in the face in the opposite direction of what the legislature has sort of asked of us to streamline our processes, examine the barriers that we have. Are they purposeful? Are they good? I do not believe at this moment that the ECCC passes muster under that standard.
I'd certainly entertain a motion of some kind so that we can just second it and then discuss it formally, if you're willing to do that, any of you.
if you really, probably the best way to just take the issue head on would be, if y'all are interested, I could invite ASPPB to actually come to our next meeting and so that we can talk about this. Or come to the site board meeting.
I'd like us all to hear. This body.
I mean, what do y'all think? I mean, like, I'm kind of
I
curious.
was gonna
to see how
say
y'all
too,
feel.
I know Diane provided basically there's a presentation from ASPBB and it kind of gives their rationale of why they feel the skills piece is needed. And I mean, it's good information to read over. You can see their side of the argument, but I mean, it's obviously, I mean, it's going to double the cost. There's so many pros and cons. I mean, there's so many counterpoints to everything that, you know, all the rationale behind it, and that it's, you know, but it is actually worth checking out. It's about a 25-minute presentation that they put on that has pretty good information. Just
To
in
me-
terms of what their rationale is, and if they have a team set up essentially that, you know, supposed to be from the outside, and they're you know, they're stating that you know, that there's concerns about competency to provide services, and so that's what they're trying to capture. So
And
it's
wouldn't
an
that
initial item.
Dr. Cartwright, wouldn't that imply that if there are concerns about competency, wouldn't that imply that there are concerns about competency now with only one part? And we're licensing people with just one part of the test?
Exactly. No, and I mean, that's the whole point. It's they're making these points, but it's, you know, what we've already been doing has not shown to be a failure to anyone that at least that we know of. So I mean, since 2018, there hasn't been an oral exam, and you know, nobody's seen any groundbreaking issues or competency issues for people that are getting licensed. So, and that's a great point you make, and it is just something that just wanted you to know that that resource is out there to kind of look at and see what their point of view on it. So it's good information to have, you know, if you're arguing one side or the other, for sure.
Thank you. I think Mr. Halber, Stephen has his hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Daryl, you had mentioned that there are 7 states that already have this. Have we had any measurable data out of those states to see the effect of this exam?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay.
You know, one of the hard things is trying to figure out what do you look for in measuring whether or not this exam is doing its job? Because we couldn't detect any kind of change in anything when we stopped doing the oral exam. You know, complaints didn't spike. They haven't spiked in the years since. You know, some people might argue, well, yeah, you're not going to see it immediately. It's going to be several years down the road. Well, maybe we'll see it 20 years down the road. I don't know, but we haven't seen anything here and now. I can check with them and see, but my problem is I don't even know what to ask them about other than have complaints gone up.
In the face of a mental health crisis, we sure as heck don't need another barrier, especially if the first one is
Yeah,
not such
it's
that anything is there's any incompetence. You know.
it seems very strange that you don't even know what to ask for that this could be remedying. And
I
it
think-
seems like a barrier that we can't even identify a problem.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
precisely the point.
Right.
And that's right.
And I think also, just as this is just my observation, there's nothing, I have no data to back this up, but it's just observation and an opinion. When you look at ASPPB, it's made up of Canadian provinces and 50 states and some of our territories. For them to do a one-size-fits-all approach of please adopt this second part of this, add this second test, it ignores all of the barriers and all of the structures and all of the things that are happening right now in all 50 states. And, you know, we are trying to address this. And like I said, we're going to get to the report here later on. We answer to the people of Texas, the legislature, the governor. We don't answer to ASPPB. And I just think that's a really important thing to remember as we proceed in this conversation.
Agreed, Ms. Smith.
Thank you for recognizing me, Chair Canseco. I just had a quick question. What's the estimated additional cost that an individual licensee would have to undergo to do this?
$450 for part two. Part one is $600.
Right, so for them to actually get licensed, it's gonna cost them over $1,000. Did I get that right?
If they
Just for the
pass both
test.
on
Just for the
first-
test?
Yeah,
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Daryl, if they pass both on the first try.
correct.
And that's also not to mention, like, most people that take those exams do need to purchase some sort of studying materials.
Correct.
Practice exams, and it's not cheap, I mean, so.
So I just wanted that on this forum and on this record, exactly how much this is going to cost. Thank you for answering my question.
Thanks. And in the face of this discussion and in order to move things along, is there a motion on the floor? Or is someone willing to make that motion?
Do we want to invite ASPPB? Was that the question?
I'd like to invite them to, well, frankly, I'd just like to ask them to explain. So this is my thinking before the motion starts. Sometimes when you invite somebody to speak, there's the courtesy that is involved, which I'm not implying that we should be discourteous in any way, but the dynamics are a little bit different. Whereas if we make a motion that flat out asks the question and then invite them, they must respond to the question. And my question would be, tell us what barrier you are trying to overcome, and is it evidence-based? Because if
Sure,
we have those questions, then sure, is there evidence that this is truly a need? Or is our, that's not, or nothing, something along those lines.
What? Go ahead, John.
I was gonna say, Chair Canseco, if I'd be happy to make a motion. But if you would like to write a letter and if you'd like a co-signer on it to invite them to one of our meetings, just as a public comment
Sure,
thing, I'm happy to sign on to that with you.
that makes sense. Thank you.
What, sometimes when you're in, you alluded to it, Chair, is when you're in these meetings, there's a certain amount of formality that precludes you from being able to get down to the gist of really what has to be talked about. What if we had like just a ad hoc committee or an ad hoc group of you, 3 or 4 of you, and we set up a meeting with whoever the powers that be at ASPPB that are authorized to talk on this. We get y'all all together, and we have a meeting in person, if we can, that way. Would that be preferable to a formal meeting here?
It would be to me, because for that meeting, and I'm sorry for not being recognized, I just jumped in. I would also encourage more members of the TSBP to be in that meeting as well, not just us, because I want to make sure that their voice is really heard, that individual license board is really heard.
I think that would be great.
Okay.
Now, how does that work in terms of a motion? Do we appoint? Do we ask?
You really don't need to. I don't even think we need to do a motion. I can just, who wants to? I mean, who wants to do that from the council?
Well, I've heard of this. You speakers, definitely John, Janine, Stephen, and Mark. How does that sound?
Sure, I'm happy to serve. And Mark and John, you guys get your people from your own individual boards to be in on it as well. I want to make sure that intelligent questions are being asked, and I'm not going to know all of them. I'm just going to ask price and barriers.
I ask plenty of dumb questions on this too, so those are.
Yeah, and I'm
You'd be in
starting
good
from
company.
scratch. I'm a layperson, so I'm starting from scratch. What about you, Stephen? As an attorney, you might bring a new perspective on this too. Would you be interested?
I'm happy to serve if Mark and John think I would be a useful addition to this, I'm happy to join. But I'll be honest, as a public member and coming from LPC, I will generally defer to what both Mark and John feel is best on the decision making. Now, if you would like me to show up and ask my share of dumb questions, like John, like he put it, I'm happy to serve, of course.
I guess maybe I'm a little biased toward lawyers since my husband is one, but I feel like you come from this analytical perspective. Oh, you're one too, right, Darren?
You know, if
Barred, yeah.
Daryl or Chair Conseco, really Mark and John as well, is if you think that I could kind of bring a broader perspective to like the overall effect on our other mental health boards, yeah, I'm happy to provide that perspective.
Great.
We'd love to have you.
Okay, count me in.
Okay, we got a committee.
Okay,
And then we'll
Alright.
talk with our own board and see who, would be willing to help out as well.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
John will
Right,
do
and if
that.
there's any other board that isn't represented, please talk to them and pass on your comments to one of us. Or your concerns. That way we can make sure everything's covered. So let's invite them. That's about as direct as we're gonna get, John. I know you and I were chomping at the bit. I could see it in your little eyeballs. Okay, what's next?
all right. Next up is going to be the discussion and the effects of the EEOC discrimination charge against ASWB on their exam disparity. I've put that, the copy of the charge in your meeting materials for you to look at there. This is just more of an FYI, kind of put you on notice. Depending on how this thing goes and if there is a lawsuit out of that, this could be an issue that we have to deal with. There's nothing we can do or should do right now based on it because there's just nothing to do for it right now. I'm just putting it out there so that you guys know we're watching it, we're monitoring it. Social work board. I can't remember, Chair Brumley, were y'all aware of this at your last meeting or did this pop up after that?
No, it came up really quick after it, but we didn't know about it during our meeting.
Okay. Okay, so social work board they'll be apprised of it at their next meeting. And who knows how long it'll take the EEOC to work through this. So it may take it a while, but it's a rather complicated process that this type of a charge has to go. They call it a charge at the EEOC has to go through. So we'll keep you apprised as things develop on that. On K and L, I don't have anything. Those requests are still pending with the Attorney General. I did include the briefs on one. I can't remember which one it is now. On L, the briefs from TPA and TASP on that, just so that you would have those for your reference. And then the last thing I've got under 3 is going to be M. I mentioned earlier about we're constantly looking for ways to move forward, make things better. And I broached this up. I mentioned this in the past with you about inviting CE Broker or an entity like that to our meeting to talk about automating the collection and just the collection and assimilation and use of continuing education records by licensees. I'm gonna butcher this something terrible. There's Ms. Rogers. So I'm gonna butcher this terribly, I think, but I'll give you a rough outline. See what we're looking at doing, kind of what I envisioned was we adopt a program like CE Broker where licensees have to report all their continuing education hours. They would upload all their documents into that program. It's free. It doesn't cost the licensees anything to do or to use it. It doesn't cost us anything to use it. Our database then pings that CE Broker system to see have they uploaded their 30 hours, their 40 hours, or their 24 hours, whatever. Excuse me, whatever the case may be. And then if they're clear, if they've got all those hours, the database green lights the renewal and they can move forward. That's a little different process than what we do now, whereas we do what's called a pre-renewal audit. We would be shifting to what is really a post-renewal audit. But the reason I think this would be beneficial is right now, when people are renewing, we don't really know whether or not they've had all their hours. And they could be uploading pictures of their cat into the database and we wouldn't know it unless they're audited. If we go with the CE Broker route, we at least know they're going to have to upload something and indicate they've had 30 hours. There will be something in the system before it ever lets them renew. Whereas right now they just have to affirm. They just have to say, yes, I've done all my hours. And then if they're audited, that's when we would catch them in a lie. Which, by the way, we get 0 complaints out of continuing education. Nobody violates this stuff. It's a very, very low risk area. So I'm not I'm not really worried about, the prospects of shifting from a pre-renewal audit to a post-renewal audit. I think this would take some of the workload off of staff. I think it would probably be easier for licensees to upload into this system. CE Broker also can serve as like one-stop shopping for licensees if they're looking for continuing education. The CE Broker also has different levels of service that they provide. The free one is just that it's free. You don't get you get some bells and whistles, but not everything. But they've got several upgrades that you can do, basically where they'll be a concierge for you. Just go fetch the stuff. All you have to do is just sit there and take it. I know CE Broker is going to be like, wow, that's vastly oversimplification, but for purposes here, what I'm trying to get at is that something that y'all would be interested in exploring? I'm not asking you to make the decision, but if you're like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to add any more complexity or another password or login that licensees have to remember, then I'll kill that. I'll just flush this idea right here. But I personally think it's something worth exploring and getting CE Broker in here to do a presentation to show you what it can do. But if y'all don't want it, I'll shut up. So I want to kind of gauge y'all's interest in it.
I think it sounds cool. Oh, there's Dr. Smith.
Thanks for recognizing me. I'm really interested in it because I always forget where I've put that certificate, and I'm always freaked out that I'm going to lose it. So I love that. But how much does this cost out of our budget? I get it doesn't cost a licensee anything, but what does it cost out of our budget, Daryl? And kind of just estimation.
Zero. It doesn't cost us anything.
So how do they support the record keeping on this? Who pays for that then?
I think they make their money off of those concierge levels. I think their services they offer pretty well, and I think entices quite a few people to upgrade, and that's where they get their money. And they may make some money off of the relationships they have with the CE providers as well. I don't know that for sure. We can ask them if y'all want to during the program, but it does
I
not.
would like to, yeah.
And it does not cost the licensee anything at the free level.
Right. And I love that. I would like for us to do a little bit of checking, because I noticed that really the two agencies that that kind of are like us are the social workers and the psychologists. So I'd love it if you or the staff would ask them how they've been happy with that, as well as bring them in for us to talk about it.
Well, I mean, actually, nobody in the council is using CE Broker right now.
No, but I noticed that when I looked at the list, at the client list that they have, it seems like that psychology and social work comes up more than, as far as we're concerned, more than anybody else.
In other jurisdictions?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Like the Association of Social Work Boards is on their client list.
Yeah.
So I'd like it if before they come and give us this presentation, if you or somebody on staff could ask either the Florida board, because that was represented with psychology, and then the Association for Social Work, or if you can just kind of visit and ask them, have they been happy? Are there hidden costs that they didn't tell at the beginning? Just that kind of stuff, as well as them give us a presentation. Did that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Taylor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to continue on Janine's thought process, because I agree with you, Janine. My experience with these platforms, I know it's rare that I would say that, but I do. My experience with these platforms is that they typically have the boiling water effect, and that we'll get kind of trapped into using it, and then all of a sudden there are costs that add into it. But if it is free, it seems too good to be true. So I'd like to know, by using this platform, are we inadvertently backing or giving preference to one side of the CE industry? So like, are their preferred providers going to be getting not from us, but an indirect financial benefit because we're using this program?
Gotcha.
So those would be my questions.
Okay. And I think those are fair questions to ask them if we bring them here for a presentation. Just point blank ask them.
Mhm.
Dr. Taylor, is there something in advance you'd want me to look at
I don't know that there's something particular in advance. I mean, maybe just sending over the company info if they have a dossier or you know. I'm wary of things that are free because they're usually not actually free. So
Gotcha. Chair Hallbauer?
Daryl, could you tell if the free version of the program has the capability of differentiating the type of CE hour that was achieved? Because should our rule changes pass, we have to do more differentiating based on whether it's on the approved list, whether it qualifies under the diversity requirements, et cetera. I mean, does the free version have the capability to separate that?
Yes, the free version will have the ability, you can select when they upload it, they'll be able to select like ethics, cultural competency, supervisory status, that type of stuff. Where it comes in to see whether or not we would still be responsible for checking to see is what you uploaded actually supervisory status hours or ethics hours. We would do that on the we would do that as a post-renewal audit instead of a pre-renewal audit is kind of the way I'm envisioning it working.
Okay.
But yes, we can do that at the free level. Or it would do that.
Okay. Personally, I'd like to hear a little bit more from CE Broker. I have the same concerns that Dr. Taylor has. Seems like they, every app that you sign up for, there's the free version, but it comes with all these additional burdens that they conveniently get rid of if you upgrade to the subscription paid version.
Yeah. Understood.
That was tactful.
I'll extend an invite and tell them to watch this video and be prepared to answer this line of questioning.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah. Okay, if there's nothing else there, were there any other questions about that? Hearing none, that's all I had for 3 informational. Moving on to 4. I don't have anything under 4A. There's no actions, no licensing or disciplinary actions. The first major item under 4B is the setting of the future meeting dates for the 24-25 biennium. And one of the things I'd sent out in that email to you back in November is I want y'all to consider moving to a triennial meeting schedule instead of a quadrennial or a quarterly meeting schedule. Just throw that out there, see what y'all think. I feel like the way things have been going, that I don't know that we necessarily need to have 4 meetings a year, that we can probably cut it down to 3 and still get the same amount of work accomplished by just spreading the meetings out in an appropriate manner. And I had Brenda put together some dates for y'all to look at there that I feel like does that. So regardless of whether you pick quarterly or triennial.
Yeah, that's a mouthful.
Yeah.
October, February, June.
So at what point do we vote on that, or does someone propose that and then we vote on it, or how would that?
Well, I mean, I guess the first thing to do would be y'all talk about, do you want to switch from quarterly to triennial? Because if you do, then you would be looking at the dates under the triennial meeting section to select from. And if you want to continue doing quarterly, you'd pick from those dates we provided under the quarterly date meeting list.
Is there a savings to budget when there are fewer meetings? Does this?
Yeah, it cuts down. Every meeting is well, if you're assuming y'all travel, it's $5,000 is what we have budgeted for each meeting.
And you think the same amount of work could be accomplished now that you've so all the fires have been put out from the last 3 years?
Right. Let me move this.
Sure.
I mean, the good thing about moving to the triennial, even if you get to your last meeting and you're like, wow, we're not going to get everything done, or at some point you feel like you need another, we'll just have another one. I mean, it's kind of a no harm, no foul type deal.
Dr. Taylor?
Thank you, Chair. I almost thought I was on mute, but I'm not, so it's good.
Just figured out how to find the hands that are going up. Don't feel bad.
Yeah. So, Daryl, I really like this idea. I think we've got to the place in our workload where we can do a triangle meeting or whatever you want to call it. I think that works. My main concern is that if the other boards are on quarterly and then we move to only 3 a year, that's going to create some I don't know. It seems like I would prefer that the LPC board would also go to 3 a year if that's an option, or maybe that all the boards would do that. If that works.
Yeah, you and me both. I'd prefer that too, but I think that's gonna be up to those boards.
I am pro 3 for Behavioral Health Executive Council, and Steve, if you're on board with it, I'm pro that we move ours to match.
John?
Yeah, I support the idea of three meetings, and if something comes up and we need to address something, you can call an emergency meeting or a special meeting, depending on the circumstances, and call it, out of cycle. If we did this, I would also be looking at the calendar. I guess with rulemaking, that's the biggest thing. With rulemaking, it's nice to align the calendars to where things aren't sitting in limbo for too long. So I would be looking at the calendar to, kind of synchronize the psychology board meetings along with that schedule as well.
Makes sense. Anybody else? I'll entertain a motion then
Nope.
to,
I think
I was
Chair,
just gonna say, I'm in agreement with John and Chris. I think I like the idea that if something comes up that we could always, have not necessarily an emergency meeting, but we could address it at that time. And I do think it takes a little bit of burden off. And then also aligning the board, the select board with the, and we'll talk with our respective boards about it, but I think I like the idea personally.
thank you. Mr. Hallbauer?
Thank you, Chair. Daryl, if BHEC went to 3 meetings and then all the member boards also followed suit and went to 3 meetings, what are the areas that, because of that change, get extended on the time frame it takes to resolve something? So instead of waiting a certain amount of time for the next quarterly meeting, someone who maybe has a complaint before the board that they want resolved, what are the areas that in effect get extended because of the now longer time frame between triennial meetings?
any kind of applicant issue that the licensing committee for your respective board can't address or that staff can't address, that's gonna get extended out by, shrinking the number of meetings down. If there are any complaints that have come from SOA, the boards aren't going to deal with a complaint pre-SOA. That you're only going to get it after it's gone to SOA. So I don't put a lot of, that doesn't concern me as much. The one issue that, y'all would need to think about is just, it may make it, you may have to sit a little bit longer if your application is denied by staff and then by the licensing committee or by the licensing committee, you might have to sit a little bit longer before the full board gets to it.
4 weeks at the most?
Yeah, you're probably talking about a month and a half.
Okay, would you expect or anticipate any pushback on that to a significant level?
No.
I'm thinking back to last year when we undertook consideration of the counseling versus non-counseling related degrees, and how we had a big log jam, and
Right.
all those people would have been delayed further. Is there something similar to that you would expect some to hear some objection to?
Well, we're not seeing the types of log jams that we had, counseling, y'all corrected that issue y'all had with the rule that dealt with the counseling degree. Social work has corrected the problem they had with their 5-year moving window. The other applications that are coming to like psych board or just the other boards now are, they're kind of scattered. There's not a consistent problem that's ginning up a bunch of applications. It's just one-offs here and there that come before it. So no, I'm not seeing anything that's going to cause a major backlog. This is not going to cause a problem that I can see.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Skoma?
Thank you, Chair. I'm curious how we think this might impact the other boards. Is there consideration that any thought that maybe that they too would go to 3 times a year, or how would it affect our work with rules being approved and things like that? And then secondly, if we got into it and decided this isn't working, would it be reversed with the same process of a motion and a vote as we're doing today?
Yeah, your last one, it's just that easy. You just go, look, we don't like this, it's not working. Move to go back to a quadrennial or a quarterly meeting system. It's really that simple there. How it might affect the other boards is you're gonna have to adjust it's really rulemaking is where it's going to impact them the most. You're gonna want to set your meetings to where you get the rules you vote out as proposed rules, the recommended rules for proposal. You want to try to set those meetings to where they go to you don't want any large gaps between your meeting and a subsequent council meeting is what I'm trying to say. So that you don't have a recommended rule change setting for a long time. Now, we already do that now with the quarterly system. So it might take a little while to adjust some of the meeting dates to get us all in sync again, but that's certainly doable. Now, just because the council, and I brought this to the council, just because the council's doing it doesn't mean the member boards have to do it. The member boards, y'all set your own meeting schedule. You choose whether you want to stay at quarterly. Ideally, I mean, if I were just king for the day, what I would say is member boards, I'd rather have y'all at 3 and the council at 4 meeting. That way we had more opportunities to chew through the rules that y'all are sending up. But candidly, I think probably sometimes the council has to lead the way. I think sometimes y'all have to show people that this can be done before they're willing to venture out and do it. And so that's why I'm starting here. I don't think, having said all that, I don't want you to think I wouldn't be doing this if I thought it was going to hurt us in some way in the rulemaking or anything. So I don't see any problems with doing it. I'm hoping that when we do it, it succeeds and that the member boards can look at it and go, yeah, that's, we can still get everything we need to get taken care of within 3 meetings a year. And if we need to do a little something extra, we'll just have a special meeting and it's just that simple. And if we don't like it, we'll switch back to quarterly, or we can go to, whatever. You got to have at least 2 meetings a year. I think all of you do. So I don't think you can go below 3. I don't think any of the boards can go below 3 and get anything. It'd be way too big of a backlog on stuff, and it becomes too difficult on the rulemaking side at that point. But 3 is certainly doable, I think.
Janine?
Thank you for recognizing me. I don't have a problem with going to 3 for BHEC. I don't want to speak for what the MFT board wants to do. I think we'll have to talk about that. But of course, I want to get as much money from the legislature always as I can. Where do you suppose to reallocate that $5,000 fund? And then how will you get it back if we decide this isn't working?
Well, it will still be in our budget. It won't go out of our budget unless we don't spend it at the end of the year, and then it gets basically reallocated back into GR. I forget what it's. My mind's
General
completely.
revenue.
Yeah, my mind's completely slipping on the technical term, but how we would use it, I don't know, because I don't know what's going to pop up between here and there. You may have to pay for a program change.
Sure. I just don't want to. I just don't want them to take it thinking, oh, you're not going to need that because you're only meeting this many times a year.
Right.
I want all that money. So in fact, I'd like more, but that's just me. So that was my question was, we're not going to lose it if we decide to do this and it doesn't work and we need it back. It's going to hamstring us in any way. So that was my question. Thank you.
Right.
Dr. Cartwright?
Thank you for recognizing me. I guess one of my questions too would just be, when are we going back into in person in Austin? I know that obviously would factor into it a little bit as well, just traveling.
Yeah.
So just curious on like the status for both board, for obviously for the select board and then personally, and then also for just BHEC in general, and if we are indeed going back to it.
Yeah, I think, well, before we really kind of decide what to do on the in-person, we've got to wait till the facilities here in Austin are up and running. And I know y'all hear me say this all the time, but I don't know when these rooms will be ready. They look like they're set up now. The equipment's in there, but it's not hooked up. And I see the techs around here all the time. So I don't know what the holdup is on it. And TFC they won't tell us when these rooms are going to be ready. So I really can't tell you when we can do an in-person meeting here. I'll be honest with you too. I'm curious to see, once we decide to do in person, how many of you are actually going to want to come back in person versus stay in some sort of hybrid fashion, because I'm afraid when we do it, you're going to realize, oh, well, I got kids soccer practice that afternoon. I wouldn't make it back for that. So I think I'd rather just Zoom in. I think you're going to see, we're going to watch the MFT board try to do an in-person meeting at Mary Hardin Baylor. I forget when it is, Janine, Anthony, do y'all remember?
Yeah, but you're going to watch the MFT board succeed in holding a back in. No, we're not trying.
Okay.
We're not trying.
Okay.
I don't have the date on the top of my head, but our next meeting is going to be in person at Mary Hardin Baylor.
Yeah, we'll,
Gerald, I believe it's in April.
April, okay.
I think it's like April 13th. They voted on.
April 16th, because it's the day after tax deadline. I remember now, April 16th.
Okay.
John?
Thank you. I'm actually, that last statement, I'm reminded of Master Yoda, said, do or do not, there is no try. So good for y'all, get her done. No, Chair Canseco, I was gonna say, if there is a need for rulemaking or something that comes up, I would say don't hesitate to call a special meeting to break a logjam if there's things that need getting done. On the idea of getting us back in person, I've made it no secret on my board that I want to get us back in person soon. I feel like we've done our best work when we are in person, face to face, tackling the issues that we need to tackle, just more productive.
I agree.
So, and then the last thing I was going to say about the budget and the money savings and where does it go? I think that I know from my experience on the psychology board that predates BHEC, Daryl, when he's gone to the legislature to ask for money for what we need it for, going through sunset and whatnot, like we asked for what we needed for. And I guess, Daryl, I don't think they've given you always everything that you've ever wanted. But when we have asked for things that we need and we say we need this and this is why, I don't think we've really not gotten it. And that follows a tradition of actually giving money back at the end of the year and being good stewards of that budget. So when we need something, we get it. And I think that it's based on a tradition of, again, giving it back if we didn't use it.
Right.
I like to have good credit with the legislature so that whenever I tell them or ask them, hey guys, I need some help here, they're like,
I really need this, and
Yeah.
I'm not, and you have you do have a history of not fooling around on that. So I just wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you. I think that's it.
Could I
Anyone?
I need to quickly update. I made a mistake. Our meeting is actually April 14th. I knew it was close to the 15th, but it's the day before, not the day after. It will be a Saturday. So April 14th will be MFTA meeting.
Thank you. Okay, so if there's no more discussion, we'll go to the next item.
well, we got to figure out, do y'all want to do the
Oh,
triangle?
we need, that's true.
Yeah.
We need a motion, please.
I make a motion that we move the BHEC meetings to a triumphant schedule. See how that goes.
Thank you.
I second it. I second the motion.
Great. We have a motion and a second to move to triennial meetings, pardon me. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your actual hand, not your little funky hand.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Thank you so
Okay.
much. The motion passes.
Now, do you guys want staff do we want to stick with the traditional Tuesday as the BHEC meeting date for each of those weeks in your meeting packets?
It's good for me. Yes.
So that we don't have to sit here and argue over this particular, decide what particular day.
Chair
Okay.
Canseco, is there a day of the week that works best for you?
The Tuesday is great for me.
Okay, I would, since you're the one that travels, I want your opinion on it.
Thank you.
Or would Mondays be better for y'all?
Tuesdays
No,
is
Tuesday.
for me.
Tuesday? Okay,
Tuesdays is
Okay.
better for me too. I work on Mondays.
okay. So we'll keep it at Tuesdays.
And on Tuesdays, all I miss is a yoga class. Okay, the question, I think it's the Robert Valdez questions that you have.
Yeah,
for
the
Cindy.
next item is a draft letter that I wanted to request permission from y'all to send. When Chair Belimovitz and I were at the ASPPB meeting, we had we got to sit through a presentation by Dr. Valdez, who is the director of a division of Health and Human Services I'd never heard of before. Basically, it's the research arm for U.S. Health and Human Services. And as we're sitting there listening to him talk, and I kind of get a feel for what the capabilities of his particular division are, I thought that would be like, if anybody could pull off the type of research that I'm talking about in my letter here, it would be his division. So John and I went up to him afterwards and we're chatting with him, and I just asked him, I said, can we submit a request for a project? And yeah, he's like, no, I'm not telling you we're going to take it. I won't say we'll do it, but you know, that's certainly how we get ideas about what to research, is by people just asking us. So I came back and I thought, I'm going to sit down and draft this out and just, I mean, what do y'all think about sending something like that? That type of data, that type of research would be invaluable to this particular body's functioning.
Mhm.
What are y'all's thoughts on that?
Anybody?
I support it.
I do too.
Same. I think the questions are well thought out and we'll get a lot of information from that knowledge. I hope they take it up.
I like the idea of just generally just sort of taking a leadership role, since we're one of
Yeah.
the few agencies like this in the country.
Yeah.
Um,
I originally got the idea, ASWB had kicked off they tried to hire some researchers to do this type of research, but they hired them to do a literature review. And what they found was there's really not any literature out there that addresses this particular issue. And so they pivoted and switched to a different kind of research. But that's where I kind of realized, okay, we're going to need some heavy hitters to do this kind of research, because I cannot do it in-house here. So basically, if y'all are okay with it, I need a vote just to give me authority to send it, and then I'll sign it and send it.
do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second,
There's a motion and a second. All those in favor signifying by raising your hands. Yes, unanimous.
Okay. Next item is going to be the survey questions for my eval, which is coming up. Are y'all still okay with the questions that you generated last time?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Anybody not happy with that?
The only one that I always thought was a little strange was that number 11.
Enhances knowledge and skills in such critical areas as management, budget development, human resources.
Oh,
and
wait, no,
census
I'm sorry.
building.
Not that. I don't guess.
Not that one? Yeah, that looks fine.
Oh, yeah, that is it. But it says by attending at least one seminar. I'm like, y'all really don't know what I attend.
So do you want us to just
Um,
nuke it?
Well,
No, I think that, I mean, Daryl, I know you go to a lot of stuff and so, I mean, you do. I think for me, like your participation in things like ASPPB and what are you coming up to DC for the social work
yeah,
thing coming up? I mean, like those are all things that I put into that bucket. And
yeah.
it's something that I would expect from our executive director. And so I think that that's a good thing on there, because if I'm not grading you on that, I'm going to be grading somebody else on that. And so I want it here.
Okay.
But I mean, for the record, maybe if there's any clarification, I think I've clarified it for those of us here, is that I'm putting things on there that he's teaching and participating into that category.
Yeah, I know for me, whenever I read that, I include like my participation, like I'm gonna go to like the ASPPB mid-year meeting in Denver to deal with this EPPP Part 2 type issue. To me, I would put that in this bucket, but I didn't know if that's how y'all were viewing it, because if you're not,
Yes.
we got a disconnect here.
No,
And
that makes sense.
no, I agree with John. That's what I consider too. The things that you go to that you guys just came back from for MFT. So I consider that as well. I don't know if the public knows how many individual things you do, because John knows his, I know mine, Chris knows his, we all know our individual boards, what you're doing. So I don't know if the general public knows it, but and I don't know if you want to advertise it sometime, all the things that you do, but I'm for leaving that question in there. That's what I consider.
Okay. Then I don't think any action is needed, and I'll send that survey out as it was, or as you see it there, same as it was last year.
Thank you.
The next item is just, I had to make some minor changes to the personnel manual. I gave you a track changes to show you what the changes were, and then a clean copy. I need that approved, the personnel manual approved.
Great. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Do I hear a motion to approve the personnel manual as updated?
So
Janine?
moved. So moved.
Okay.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded to approve the new personnel manual, well, not new, the updated personnel manual. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Sorry, I'm slow on the uptake. The motion passes unanimously.
All right. Next item is going to be the discussion of the Senate Special Committee report. Protect All Texans. I call it the Uvalde report.
Yeah.
I've highlighted all the areas where they either directly mentioned BHEC or its licensees, or they made statements that were kind of directed at behavioral health in particular. I know with the structure of BHEC, the member boards are responsible for licensing, standards, scope of practice, that type of thing. But one of the important things to point out in this report is that they mentioned this body, not the individual member boards. And Senator Nichols, who chairs that committee, is the father of BHEC. He carried the bill in the Senate. So there is an awareness in the legislature of kind of our structure, how we do things. So, I guess we need to figure out, I was kind of hoping y'all would have some discussion and figure out what do we need to do to respond? What actions do we need to take? This is a report directing the legislature to do some things, but I'd really hate to sit on our haunches and wait for somebody of the legislature to go, okay, now Daryl, y'all saw the report. Did you do anything? No, we were waiting on y'all to tell us what to do. I recognize there's a lot we can't do because a lot is statutory, but for the stuff that's not statutory, how do y'all want to handle that?
This is a big one. I read this 2 or 3 times. One of the things that came to mind to me first was after the emergency part of the Uvalde crisis passed, I felt like we didn't get much information as board members. And I know several of you reached out through your individual board councils. I personally reached out with a task force from San Antonio, thinking that picking a group that spoke Spanish and reaching out through Health and Human Services, and I didn't get a response. So, and I don't mind not getting a response in the emergency phases, but I never heard anything again and was sort of annoyed. The other thing is that there's a question, there's a question on page, or a highlighted section on page 52, where it specifically asks that we should review the hours of supervision needed to qualify for licenses. I think we do that, and I think we need to respond formally. And then consider accepting supervision earned outside Texas. I couldn't remember that's a reciprocity thing. Is that correct?
Partly, yes, partly.
So then right after that, it says a review of reciprocal licenses. So that seems that sounds like an order to me. I'm sure it's not, because this is a report, but we might need to take it as such. I too would prefer to be proactive. You
Rather
think so
than
too?
reactive, yeah.
Right. I don't know if anybody else, this is such a, so here comes the layperson saying this has done so much damage to the state psyche, not just to those that were directly involved. And then secondly, as a border girl myself, I wondered about cultural competency because of that, because it's a high, I guess I can say a Latino area, Latino, Latina. I don't want to get into that. But the point is there are a whole boatload of Spanish speakers down there. So I wondered about the interaction post-emergency, period with us as individual members and as a group. So that's where I am. But yes, I think we need to respond. Dr. Smith, Janine. I say doctor, and then I look up and see MA. So
No worries, no worries. I just don't want to present myself with something else. Thank you for recognizing me, Chair Canseco. I've got two thoughts on this. While I agree we need to respond, I think we need to respond well, because I like the fact that they made the idea of broadening more positions in schools, which will mean the legislature will have to allocate more funds for schools, number one, so schools can hire more therapeutic positions. So that's the first thing. The second thing is why I feel like we need to respond strongly to this and to let them know we are already looking at supervision things. We are already looking at statute, what we need to change within that. But what I really makes me concerned is their thought that we need to expedite faster, because to me that sounds like water down your practice, because we already have lots of standards that all of our individual boards believe in, that this is the bare minimum to become a licensed mental health professional. We're not out there just chit-chatting about what they buy for groceries that day. We are working with families in crisis, people in crisis. And to water down our professional standards, I really had to push back about that one paragraph, expedite it more, make it more streamlined, hurry up and get more people through. Well, that's all good. And I want them to know we're looking at that and attacking that. But the standards that we have we don't go and tell the doctors, hey, you don't need the big, huge toxology part in your degree if you're not going to be working with toxins. Well, so I am agreed that we need to respond back to let the legislature know we're already looking at how to expedite, but we are not willing to make it to where it would influence or compromise our standard of care.
Absolutely not. I agree. Thank you. John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I'm looking at this paragraph here that was highlighted for us, and I think it's important to note what they said and what they did not say and what they were able to say. And what they said was the legislature should consider directing BHEC to streamline licensure requirements, and they go on. This was done largely, and this is done in the interim when the legislature was not in session. So the legislature at that moment was not able to direct us to do anything. So this statement that the legislature should, coming from the committee that was chaired by the man who conceived and got BHEC across the finish line, I think that is, I think I read that as a clear directive, a clear, no ambiguity, go look at this. Because this is truly the most that they could. I think this is about as forceful as you could get of a statement, again, when the legislature is not in session. When I read streamlining, I understand, and I hear about it often on the psychology board about protecting the standards. I get it. I don't see anything in here that says water anything down. I don't see anything here that says lower. But I see in here is it kind of goes back to when we held the psychology board, when I called the special meeting out of cycle after Uvalde. And the thesis statement of that meeting was, we can't fix this whole thing on our own, but if we own 5% of this, 7% of this, 10% of this, we're going to own it and fix that part of it. And so I do think that when I read this and look at this, I don't know if BHEC needs to respond to the legislature except with anything other than our actions. And I do think that it's important, because when the legislature is going to come say, what have you guys done? we can't just shrug our shoulders and say, oh, we're just waiting on our other boards, you know, the psychology board or the marriage and family therapist, whatever other board to do something. They're going to be asking us at this level. I think it's important that BHEC at this level directs or asks every board beneath us to go look at these things, read that paragraph and report back. And if there's nothing that you think needs to change, then I guess say so. I think that, but I don't think anyone's going to come back and say that. I think everybody's going to come back and say, here's what I think we can fix. And I would like a good answer if somebody from the pink building called us and said, what have you done? What are you doing? And I think that each board ought to have very specific action steps that, you know, either have been taken or are immediately underway.
Did you notice on page 43 that Dr. Keller from the Meadows Institute talked about the consortium given authority to expand ranges of partnerships, and how does that, or does that affect the fields under which that we supervise or that we, you know, license and regulate? Page 43, it's highlight.
That was talked about in our special meeting. That came up a whole lot as a way. I'm not prepared to comment exactly on any snags that from psychology that we would have in that realm. But I think that's the question. Like, what if we're going to do that from a licensing perspective? What snags are there? And let's eliminate those snags.
And LMHA is, he uses an acronym I'm not familiar with.
I think it's licensed, I think
Mental
licensed
health?
mental health authority or something like
Ah.
that, I think is what that stands for.
Or maybe authorities,
Yeah. Local mental health authority, not licensed.
So he's suggesting, now I know he's just a participant in the panel, but he's well known, and he's suggesting, I mean, that just almost sounds like not double dipping, it sounds inefficient.
Well, he's saying it's not funding, but it's the workforce is the limiting factor. And there is, you know, the legislature is going into the biggest budget. You know, we're flush with more cash than we have been in recent memory. There is no check you can stroke to put more mental health practitioners on the field. That is the hard work. That is, that's, I think, you know, what's our licensing regime? What are we doing to not discourage people from getting into this profession? You know, what are each of our barriers appropriate?
Right.
Do any of them need to change? Do any of them need to be more streamlined? What about our own processes?
Mhm.
And all of the thing is, the kicker is that all of that rulemaking has to be initiated at not the BHEC level. It has to be initiated at the level below us. And that to me is BHEC's charge to say, hey guys, we're all on notice here. We're going to get the phone call if y'all don't, if the other boards don't act. So it's time. What you doing?
So John, I think that each board is doing things. So maybe that the board report to BHEC what they're doing, so BHEC could report back. I think that's what you're saying.
That's a yes. Because I don't know. I know what we're doing on psychology.
Sure.
And I'm happy to report on all that. But I think from this level, are each of us informed if we got a call from Senator so-and-so, or Representative so-and-so, or Chair so-and-so, what you doing? We all need to be prepared to give a very good answer.
Dr. Skoma?
Thank you. I just wanted to say, as I read through this, I think many of these things that they are asking for, we are in fact doing. We all understand the dynamics of lowering overregulation and burdens. We've talked about that today with our colleagues on the psych board and trying to work those things. I've already talked about today making it easier to bring in like credentialed counselors from other states. So many people are moving to Texas. Let's make it easier to transfer license into these kinds of things. I wanted to ask this question, and we hear this on our board, other boards from time to time. Well, we wear some statutory handcuffs. There's only so many things we can do. And I understand that. Some experience in my past in the legislature as well, but seems to me, and please don't hear me making light of anything, but there's the saying, never waste a crisis. And there are moments when people are paying attention. And I am curious, is there a list of statutory handcuffs that we would say these are problematic things that we would like to see change that would help us as boards to make it easier to bring access to more mental health counselors. Do we have a list of those kind of things? Do we have a Christmas list of what we'd like Santa to bring us? And is there any possibility of moving those things forward in a legislative environment that might be more acceptable to freeing our hands in some of those ways? The other thing I think is a difficulty simply, and is what John was saying, that some of this is free market dynamics. And as we know, I think everybody's aware that we have a shocking percentage of our mental health counselors that reside in only 4 counties in our state. And so that leaves places like our border, like East Texas, West Texas, vulnerable. So are there dynamics to maybe telehealth counseling that we can incorporate more? Or are there incentive processes that we could look into with some of these surplus funds, maybe to incentivize counselors to actually locate to some of these more difficult and rural places? That's what I've got.
Daryl, do you know if there's any?
Well, as
Statutory.
far as the statutory, I call it, I keep kind of a running list of statutes that I see as sometimes operating problematic. There is, if you look in our strategic plan, one of the requirements, a required element of a strategic plan is statutory impediments. And so you'll see a list of statutory impediments that we've identified, the council's identified, and set out in there, some changes that could be made. And some of that is for the board, some of it is, at the council level. So yes, that's the only official that's been voted on, but it's part of the strategic plan. Dr. Scoman, there is no list that like the MFT board or the psych board or any of the individual boards has said, look, we've looked at our statutes and none of us like the way this operates, but you've got our hands tied here. We've never done that. Part of the reason is it's kind of weird. What do you do with it once you've identified it? Because we can't lobby. And I mean, candidly, sometimes what we identify as problematic, the associations may not view that way. And because they're the ones that kind of have to carry the water over there for making those types of changes, it may not go anywhere. But no, we don't have a list at the board level like that. We just have what is in the strategic plan, those impediments identified there. Now, I don't think there's anything unlawful about us generating a list like that. I don't know what you do with it. And I don't know if there would be any kind of, I don't know if aspersions or, if somebody would question the motive for generating that type of a list at the board level. I'm not sure. I don't know how that would be viewed.
Can I chime in on that?
Yes.
So that was sort of one of the things that I said when we called our meeting, is that I think the way I put it is that I anticipate we're going to bump our head on things that are statutory that we can't do anything about. And I'm not going to comment on those things, but we're going to ride this horse as far as it'll take us. And then we're going to hand it over to the legislature to where we can say, we've done X, Y, and Z. We're statutorily limited that we can't go further than this. So here you are, legislature, like as the bureaucracy, we've done what we can. If this is still something that you guys would like to see, this is not our prerogative, but yours. And I'm not going to comment on the wisdom of those things. That again, that is the legislature's prerogative at that point. I think that's the clear delineation between our role in a regulatory sense and their role as a legislative deliberative body. So as long as we understand that line, we're good.
Right. We'd report what we've done and then identify without making a judgment one way or the other. Is that
Correct? Yeah. Because there's some big things, there's some big statutory things that there's big debates on within psychology.
Mhm.
That's not our prerogative because it's a statutory thing. And I'm fine calling them what they are. I'm just not going to wade into that because, if I wanted to wade into that, I could go run for office and have an opinion on that. But for now, I'm going to stay in my lane and do what we can.
Thank you. Dr. Taylor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree, John, and I agree, Anthony, as well. when I read the report, one of the things that hit me was that, yes, we're already doing a lot of these things, or we have already done them. We have already increased the speed of applicants getting approved. We've reduced a lot of rules that were unnecessary. We embraced telehealth very quickly on the LPC board. We made things a lot easier. One of the issues and one of the points that I have, points of contention I have with this report is that while it does, examine the accessibility into the marketplace, it doesn't talk about the financial reward that a therapist gets or lack thereof for being a therapist. I think many therapists struggle to earn a livable wage on all levels with a master's degree or a doctorate as a LPC, LMFT, or a psychologist. I think a lot of us, some do very well for sure, but others struggle. And if they want to take on the hard role of working in a rural community or working at a school setting or taking insurance, which is very difficult and complex to navigate. And I know that all of this is outside of our scope as a licensing board and a regulatory body. So I'm not advocating that we go take on the insurance companies. But I do want to make it very well known that is part of the problem. When I sit down and look at it and I say, if I'm in grad school, do I want to become a therapist or I want to become an attorney? The attorney's going to make more money, right? So, and I know we don't get into the field for money, but we still need to have a financial conversation about what is a livable wage and what is that committee, what's the state's approach to say, well, we want more therapists, let's value them appropriately. Let's encourage more remuneration for a very difficult, emotionally taxing job. Our burnout is a huge problem. And that's part of the burnout is because we get somebody that wants to come in this field, that wants to do good, that wants to help. And then we just put them in the worst possible environment, in the worst possible place, pay them barely enough money and say, keep going until you can't go anymore and then go get a new job. We
Right.
don't offer them the support they need. We are not investing as a state in mental health care. And that's something I would like to see our representatives, our senators, our governor address what's our plan? How are we going to invest in mental health?
And I know that there's been some discussion at the legislative level because of what we hear on or read in the papers or hear on the news. So that's great. The other thing I'm fairly certain of is that there was an incentivizing program for health professional shortage areas at some time. I don't know, remember if it was doctors and dentists or just physicians who, if they committed to work in a health professional shortage area, got part of their tuition or their loans paid or something like that. But it's certainly, I think identifying barriers to care insofar as we could, maybe coming from the members boards would be worthwhile, but just identifying them, not offering a solution, because we are a licensing and regulation board. Does that make sense to you?
Mhm.
Maybe there would be a way to do that. Janine?
Chris, this is a red letter day because you and I have now been in agreement 2 times.
No, it can't be.
I know. Totally agree with you. And I think that's why I was so hot at the beginning of this discussion, because while doctors go through medical school, then they're supported with a residency. Our students go through all of their training, and then while they're doing basically their residency, they have to try and scramble a place, and there aren't very many clinics or places for them to even do it. And trying to get, because we had those different bills and we had to fight to get in different licensees that would be able to get remuneration back and credit back for their college experience. So those kind of things would be great to have. If Texas would offer something like that, I think you'd see more people coming into the field. I'm wondering if not only do we, answer back what each individual board is doing to answer some of the questions or the recommendations that they had, but perhaps putting something on the BHEC website, and I don't know if this falls out of our purview, because we've talked about it for MFT, kind of some, questions where to go if you're needing help, or other consortiums that we partner with. If we're giving precedence over one over the other, I don't want to do that, but can there be other things that we can put on our website that would help direct the public or direct the licensees to tell their clients, hey, this would be a great hookup place, or not hookup, wrong word, a great resource for them? Is that a possibility to add to our FAQs on the BHEC website?
Kind of like a doctor finder.
Well, I don't know if it needs to be a doctor finder, but if they're wanting us to liaison with this consortium, do we need to have that on there? Do we need to have, hey, if you're having a problem, here's a suicide line, here's mental health help. If that, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure each of us individually have that on our personal websites, but I'm just trying to figure out what else can this board do, because we're kind of hamstrung by what our member boards are doing.
I feel like that could be very intense in the face of the other things that we need to do. I'd rather see us direct resources to each member board. If you're having, and have the member boards take something like that on with their professionals.
Great.
I mean, that's just my gut reaction is that we're still standing up this agency. There are a lot of operational things that we have to look at. We do need to respond to this letter, but I think we should be working in partnership with our member boards so that we're never being overbearing, or we don't want to be we are a superstructure in a sense, but in the negative sense of superstructures. What do you think, Daryl?
I'm not sure, like adding anything to the website would really help all that much, because when you Google, or when you search for all these different resources, there's just 1,000 different things that come up. And I think adding one thing to our website just gets lost in the mix. When I put this on the agenda, kind of what I envisioned taking place is BHEC sending a message down to the member boards. Look, guys, we got this. Here's the report from Uvalde. We need you guys to take a hard look at your rules. Y'all are the ones tasked with setting the licensing standards, scope of practice, CE, all that jazz. Take a hard look at your rules, figure out, I'm going to quote John, bring all your sacred cows into the barn. Are they still sacred? If they're not, then maybe you need to slaughter them or make some changes. If they're still sacred, put them back out in the pasture. But we need the member boards to do that, because we can't do that at this level. Now, unfortunately, the way this report's worded, we're going to be the ones held responsible for it at this level, it looks like. And I don't like the idea of us going, well, yeah, but it was them. Well, okay, well, 2 of them sat on this council here, and so I'm like, that part is, it's a funky dynamic we have here. But I don't think we need to be the one dictating, and we don't have that authority, but I do think the member boards need to take a hard look at their rules and just see is there anything we're missing, guys? I know we've looked at this stuff, but look at it from a different angle, flip it around. Maybe have them maybe hold a town hall or something, get some stakeholder input on what to do. To me, that's a cheap way to do something. And if you get nothing but bad ideas, okay, then they're bad ideas, don't use them.
Is there a timeline when you want a response back, Chair or Daryl?
When is the legislature back?
If I get questioned on it, it's going to be between now and May.
Yeah.
Probably between now and April, if I get a question about it. We don't need to, it doesn't need to be complete. I think they just need to know that we're looking at it, we're trying. And honestly, I can say that a lot of y'all are already doing that.
Right.
So I don't want to try to steal anybody's I don't want anybody to think that we're fussing anybody, because we're not. I mean, you guys are already doing a lot of this stuff. We do it at every meeting. I mean, I'm sure people are like, God almighty, would y'all quit monkeying with stuff, quit messing with us.
They
little
are.
stuff,
Yeah.
but that's what we do. That's what we've got to do to make things better. So I can defend us to some degree. I mean, but what I worry about is if, like what we had at site board happen, we had a particular applicant who got hung up on on kind of a goofy rule. It was a goofy standard, and that's me being polite and goofy by saying goofy. That's not what I would say if y'all were here in person. We were not on the record. They got hung up by a bad rule. And it took almost an act of the legislature to get that changed. And that shouldn't have happened. But we got it corrected and we're back on track. But that's the kind of stuff that I worry about. If we get in trouble, it's going to be over something like that. You're going to get one little niche bad idea, and it's going to cause it's like a sand in the gears, and it's going to cause a lot of problems. So
I'd like to see us respond. I'd like to see us talk about the issues that are brought to us, workforce issues. We're all mental health, well, not me, but every board represents mental health professionals. I think we could go back and ask them, the board, what would you like us to say? How are you addressing these things? And respond in a concise way. And then have some information ready, bullet points for each member to be able to respond in case, they are approached by their representative or someone outside, the field, let's say, or legislator in particular. I know that a couple of times when we began our work, I took a moment to fill in Senator Nichols and testified a couple of times to say, things are moving along. We're getting this done. But I'd like to be proactive in responding to this, if that's all right with you. So I see 3 more hands up, and then I'd like to break for lunch. Stephen, you're first.
Thank you, Chair Canseco. Daryl, when I read that key paragraph on page 52 of the report on the recommendations specifically geared at BHEC, I took it as an optimistic belief that the things that they were asking us to do, we could respond with how we felt as though the Texas joining the Counseling Compact addresses a few of those key recommendations there, specifically on streamlining license requirements, but also with the supervision hours. And, that's kind of tied into Senate Bill 47 on the supervision hours for the out-of-state licensees. So I would say that if we're looking for additional traction on getting the Counseling Compact done, I would want to make it very clear that we feel as though membership in that compact addresses those specific directives that they put there in that paragraph on page 52. And it's just additional support for the LPCs joining, especially when we're seeing the benefits of it with SIPAC. We look over at them and see, John and I talked about it before, and we look over there and we see that it's working there. It's a good thing. We think that that the benefits can be extended to Texas LPCs as well.
Okay, Dr. Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are definitely going to do a full rules review here in the near future. I know that that's on the docket for us, so this will definitely be top of mind as far as LPCs are concerned. But I wanted to touch on something that Janine said a minute ago. There is a nonprofit which I think I would feel comfortable putting on our website, since it's a not-for-profit. It doesn't really benefit any business. It's called Here for Texas. And it is a mental health matching line. So it helps people get access to therapists. It's also offered in Spanish, which I think is extremely valuable for a large part of our community. And so that's run by the Grant Halliburton Foundation, which is a 501c3 nonprofit based here in Dallas, that focuses only on mental health. If we could maybe add that to our website or that resource for people, I think that might be very, very beneficial. And then also, something that I've been looking at a lot recently, especially since we've allowed associates now to begin their own business. We see a lot more points of I'll say opportunity for improvement between the associates and supervisors. I know a lot of associates find it very difficult to find supervisors that they want to work with. And, I hear from more and more of our supervisors that they are wanting to supervise less or take on fewer or not work with those that are going to go into their own business right out of grad school. So it might be beneficial for us to start examining that, to provide some support for that after somebody graduates. Is there a list of supervisors that they can get? Is there a supervisor match option for an associate, so that when they graduate, they're not just kind of left hanging out saying, okay, where am I going to go get these 3,000 hours that the state requires me to have over the next, 2 to 5 years. And actually, I don't know, a crazy idea, invest in them and train them properly. I don't know. That seems bizarre. Why would we do that? Man.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. John.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess question for the chair and Daryl. In terms of a deliverable, what do you envision here? Because I don't want to suggest something that creates a whole staff research project when we just need to respond or set a standard for either I'm going to call them the underboards to report back. Are we going to draft a letter with, bullet pointed at things that we're doing in response to this? Like, do we want to direct and ask the underboards to do a, informal rule review? What do you see in terms of a deliverable that would be achievable and not add tons of extra work while still responding to and putting our labors into the right thing here?
I would prefer not to have to draft a letter
Okay.
outlining everything, because number one, it'll be outdated the minute I sign it. And I don't know who I would send it to, I guess members of this special committee, but for me, I would like to see us ask the member boards. I don't want to get in the business of directing them, because I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to take that tone or even set that tone. I think we like to ask the member boards, would you guys put together a ad hoc committee or a select committee? You figure out how you want to do it. Take a look at, pick 1 or 2 rules that you guys feel are the most problematic and that are within your power to either make changes to or to study, and then, study them and come up with some proposed changes if you feel like they're necessary.
Would you say it's like through the lens of streamlining? As it's
Yes.
suggested here?
Yeah.
I think through the lens of kind of the directive on page 52 of this report.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
I would say if we're going to ask the underboards to take a look at this, hey, I would refer you to page 52 here. Take a look at it. What are your most problematic rules and report back? What are you doing with it?
What I don't want to do, because this will be hard on me and Patrick, is ask the boards, take a look at all your rules. That turns into a nightmare for
Right.
Patrick and I don't want that. And the member boards are going to hate that, because it's a lot of work for them. But it ought to be pretty easy for all of, the boards to say, okay, these are the most common problems we see. Is there anything we can do about it? You may have your hands statutorily tied, but you might be able to come up with a creative workaround or something to ease it. You don't necessarily have to cure it, but if you could just ease it, just that, pick 1 or 2, I'd say 2 at most, and study those hard and see.
So
if you come up with a solution.
Is it fair to say, like, if this is on everyone's agenda for the next meeting, is that sufficient, or do we need a motion in a directive? Or everyone here is going back to our own boards. Like, we're all on notice collectively here. Is that enough?
I think that's enough. I mean,
Okay.
you guys are,
Agreed.
you are the member boards. The member boards are BHEC, so I think that's enough. I don't know what, putting forth a motion, seconding it and voting on it. I don't know what that does.
I don't, yeah, that's why I'm
We
asking.
agree
But yeah,
by-
we're all on notice.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm. I
and
agree.
then I think we see what they come up with.
And I don't think it would be a bad idea to toot our horn a little bit. We've done this and we've gotten results. Again, not everything, but the most significant things we've done so that they know that preceding this event, we've done some stuff that's going to make it easier as time goes on, if it hasn't already.
I really think the member boards, I'll tell them this. I don't want him, it's not a directive, but I really think the member boards need to have like a listening session for stakeholders. Each of them need to do a listening session to say, look, guys, this is what the report, this is what the committee said. We're trying to figure out what, if any, hangups we have in our rules. What do y'all see as problems? And you're gonna get a host of ideas, both good and bad, come from that. But I think that's important, because that'll be really important if somebody comes back and says, well, what have you done? Well, we took a look at it and we also solicited, the 5,000 psychologists, the 5,000 MFTs, or the 30,000 LPCs. Just a listening session. You don't nothing, the board members don't have to prep for it. You're just there to listen, to figure out what are the ideas out there. It's just like a giant brainstorming session. And let's see what we come up with. It doesn't cost anything. We can do it virtually. Social work's about to do it on another issue. We've done it at Psych Board before. So I would like to see that. I think it'd be a good idea.
Okay, I'm sorry, Dr. Taylor. Did you have something else? You still have your hand raised thing.
Yeah, I just want to lower my hand if that's okay.
Okay, all right. Okay, then I think we've agreed how to proceed by consensus and no motion is needed. It is 12:08 PM. May I suggest that we break for what, half an hour, 40 minutes? What do
We can't go anywhere, so yeah.
Yeah, well, but I meant so that they can
Oh,
so that everyone can stop and
Oh, yes.
grab a bite to eat.
maybe be back at 12:30.
Does that sound all right to you? 12:30?
It's perfect.
Okay, and I know I have to say, okay, it is 12:08 and the meeting is,
We'll stand at ease.
we'll stand at ease. Aren't you glad he's here with me? Until 12:30. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, we're back online.
Thank you. Welcome back we're back in session. It's 12:35 PM and on January 31st for the meeting of Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council. And I believe that we're on item 4, was it G or A?
G.
G.
Yeah, the workforce study, this is the project that y'all given me permission to start. I don't know, it's been well over a year ago now. It sat idle for a while. Anyway, you've got kind of now the finished product that I put together a workforce study work group of stakeholders. They helped me build this thing. I solicited input from certain legislative committees to get the staffers at those committees to kind of get input from them to see what they wanted. The idea behind it being is this will tell us kind of what our workforce looks like, maybe where it's going in the next 5 to 10 years, and kind of some of the driving factors behind, what the changes that are happening now or that will happen in the future. I wanted to know things like, what's your student loan debt? How, what's it look like? Why'd you get into the profession? Why are you leaving? Do you supervise? If not, how come? Just those types of things. So I also gave you guys a link so that you could click on it and look what it, work through it so that you can see kind of how the skip logic would work. But anyway, I think it's ready to deploy, but it's up to y'all.
I think it's ready to deploy too. Does anyone have, John, sorry, I didn't see. I didn't look up at the screen.
I have just a question. How are we promoting this? Because and with a comment, I think it's great. I think that out of all the things that we are trying to address, it's what's our workforce look like and how do we get more of them? And so I see this as kind of hopefully the results of this are somewhat of an instrument panel, but how are we promoting this to ensure the greatest participation?
Well, I'm gonna try to put it in the renewal application, a link to it in the renewal application so that each biennium, when you renew, you can update it there. Probably to get it going, I'm probably gonna send out a link to it this first year and just ask all licensees to go ahead and jump on and take it. I think it would be nice to have some of this data to hand over to the legislature and the committees right now.
Yeah.
Since they're making these decisions now, so the faster we could gather the data and get it over to them. But it's not like I'm gonna have a cutoff window. I'm not gonna say, hey, you only got 30 days to do it. This is gonna be a link that I will leave live. And I'm gonna break it down into, I think, probably bienniums or years where it will
Great.
collect. That way, when I hand over the data, I can say, this is 2 years worth of data or 1 year, whatever the case may be. So that's how I'm gonna do it. And
Well,
I'm-
just the
I'm
fact
good-
that we're executing it is gonna be great even for that response.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing.
Yeah, and I'm gonna make the data also, the data's gonna be shared public with the state associations or anybody else that wants it. I'm not just gonna keep this for us. I'll put it on the website. It's de-identified, so you cannot identify who took it. No IP addresses, nothing like that is collected. I couldn't, if you're a terrorist and make some sort of terrorist threat, I can't track you down through this, but
Nobody get any ideas.
yeah, nobody get any ideas.
I would only ask that when you put it out, put whatever the comment is on it. Just make it with the most heartfelt and sincere, like, we need this data to make great decisions regarding our workforce. The workforce is one of the biggest stumbling blocks to getting, to our mental health crisis.
Mhm.
And we're really looking at this and really need your participation.
Okay, I'll drive it home, yeah.
Okay.
Do you think the member boards would be willing to share the link?
They could, but I'm gonna blast it out to everybody.
Okay,
I've got our full email listserv. It'll go out to all of them.
okay. If it does come to your member boards, that would be nice. And of course, it's not required, but everyone sharing the link saying we're collecting this data. Please participate. That would be really helpful. Any other remarks or comments?
Do you need a motion?
Yes, sir.
Move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Me? I saw two people on that. I see you, Brian. Brian and Janine seconded. All those in favor signify by raising your hands. Okay, passed.
All right, and the last item under topic number 4 is the selection of an alternate public member to attend the budget hearings with me in the event Chair Canseco cannot attend. I've got a hearing before the Senate Finance Committee on the 15th. So that's coming up pretty quick.
Right, I will be unavailable until, well, I'm for a while. I'm taking 2 weeks off. I won't be back at work till the 13th, and I don't think I can make the 15th another day off.
I can make myself available if needed.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Mr. Belemowitz to be the alternate public member.
Is there a second?
Second that. I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor signify by raising your hand. Okay, thank you. Passes.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, guys.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm spending 10 days with a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old. 10 days. Pray. Rulemaking. Now, Daryl, I'm going to ask you before I ask everybody else. And at other times I've said, is there anything you don't want that you want to separate, and then we approve all the sections that
Correct.
no one has an objection to? So Dr. Skoma, this is, I don't know what possessed me, but this will move us along faster. What we have done in the past, what I have done in the past is said, if no one objects, we would, do we have a motion to approve items 5A, B, or does someone want to take one out to discuss separately? And it sort of moves things along more quickly. So is that all right with everybody to proceed that way?
I would, Madam Chair, I would break it down into like 5A, a motion and a vote on that, and then 5B, a motion and a vote on that, because one is proposing and one is adopting.
Was adopting,
Yeah.
okay. Let's see if I can get this. So proposed and adopted. Okay.
Just a new guy question if I could. will there be a brief explanation of these, or do you guys already know what it is you're talking about?
So if you don't have meeting materials? Do you have them?
I got them
Okay.
24 hours ago, so I'm still catching up.
So in that case, would it be inappropriate then for me to ask you to run through
Sure.
this as we go? Since I don't know them by memory, I'm just reading and
Sure.
I've read them once.
Sure. The proposed rules on BHEC deal with our priority system and how that affects applicants. What we're doing is we're proposing a change to our priority system in, I think it's 88410.
Mhm.
And right now we have a four-tier priority system. One is probability of imminent physical harm, 2 is sexual misconduct, 3 is cases involving applicants, and 4 is everything else. What we have found is there's really no reason to have 4 different categories. You really just need 2: a high priority that involves imminent physical harm and sexual misconduct. And then the other change that we're proposing in 88210, what we have found is we're having a lot of applicants get hung up in the process because they may have a complaint pending against a very low grade allegation. It doesn't involve imminent physical harm, sexual misconduct. It's not anything that would lead to like license revocation, but they're getting hung up. And as most of you know, the vast majority of complaints end up getting dismissed. So these folks are hung up for quite a while, only to find out that the complaint gets dismissed. So what we're proposing here is shrink your 4 tiers of priorities down to 2, and then only abate applications if the allegation involves a high priority complaint. That way, all these applicants with these low priority problems or allegations don't get hung up. You can still deal with them. They'll still get sanctioned. If there is something to it, their license will be sanctioned on the back end, but it doesn't foul us up in the licensing process, because we've had quite a few applicants get hung up in that. This is one of those areas where we're constantly looking to try to improve, and this is an area that we've identified we think is ripe for improvement. So I don't know if that, Dr. Scoma, if that is clear, but okay.
So on item 5A, review and consideration of the 88210, the repeal and replace, and 88410, the investigation of complaints. Do I hear a motion to approve or deny?
So moved to approve.
Second,
All those in favor signify by raising your hands. Motion passes.
Okay.
5B,
And just a reminder to the public, when these rules will be the first batch to go on that new web page where you'll be able to click on the rules and see them just like the council sees them, just like what's in your board packets, the meeting materials, and you'll be able to comment directly through a link. Just give me some time to get that up there, but that's coming. So you won't have to hunt in the Texas Register for these things anymore. We're gonna put them directly on the website.
thank you. Item B, ineligibility.
Yes, this is just adopting the proposed change that we made at the last meeting that deals with just making sure that it's clear in the rule that the offenses include, offenses that occurred on federal, state, tribal, or territorial in territorial jurisdictions. We just want to make sure that we're capturing all of those jurisdictions.
Is there any discussion? And if not, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
thank you. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hands. All in favor, the motion passes.
Okay.
6B.
Right. Nothing under 6A, so 6B is going to be, these are rules that are recommended for adoption by the MFT board. They just voted on these like last week. Hot off the press, so to speak.
And Madam Chair, I'd be open to give a quick summary of these if anybody would like.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, as Daryl mentioned, we met last Friday and had a wonderful meeting chaired by Dr. Marchant, who as always did a great job for us. We approved several rules that had gone through public comment, most notably in response to some public comment. We amended the supervisor requirement to allow any graduate level licensee with supervisor status to teach the 40-hour supervision course. We passed that one. We approved a 5-year associate license. Historically, we've required associates in MFT to renew every 2 years, but because the majority of them are fully licensed in less than 3 years, and because the 5-year model really eases burden on staff, it's one of these things. Let's make it more streamlined, quicker, all these things, fewer fees. We elected to go with a 5-year associate license as well that does not renew and does not involve any continuing education because they're working towards that dynamic. That was the associate, and then the continuing education was a small, we had neglected to include hospital systems in our list of approved CE. And so we went back and added that. So those were our actions taken last Friday.
Thank you, Dr. Skoma. Do I hear a motion to approve, or what is the word, decline?
Motion to adopt.
Do I hear a motion to adopt?
So moved.
Thank you, Janine. Second?
I'll second that if I may.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by raising your hands. The motion passes. Thank you. And where did my agenda go? Here it is. For the Texas Board of, it's item 7A for the Board of Examiners of Psychologists. Does anyone want to speak to those?
I can start on that, and Dr. Cartwright, feel free to chime in. Daryl, also, I think sometimes you're better versed on being able to recite the history of some of these things, so feel free to chime in at any moment. We're starting with the proposed, is that correct?
Correct.
Sir.
7A. Mhm.
This is the LPA one, and is this hang on, I'm sorry, this is the remediation one, to where we can allow them to it does not lower standards if they haven't met a lot of these standards having to do with hours. They cannot, but if there's a deficiency, we can apply a reasonable deficiency. So we did this already for the LPs, and it mirrors what we've already done there.
Right.
This is one of those rules that the psych board is doing they did it before the Uvalde report came out, but it's directly responsive to the Uvalde type concerns, the Uvalde report concerns.
We were really handcuffed by essentially, if we saw something where, like, logically we should approve this person and everyone can see that this person is qualified, we essentially had to, like, take our lives into our own hands and just approve somebody, which has happened. It's not that comfortable because the rules, it took a generous interpretation of the rules. This gives us a framework, guardrails, and a procedure for doing what we knew to be right.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raising your hands. Any opposed?
Do we have a motion in a second?
I'll move.
Oh,
It was
so
there's no objection, so I was going to take it, but I'll move to propose.
I
I'll
apologize.
second it.
Thank you.
Second it.
Thank you. And do we need to vote again, just in case?
Yeah, just in
Yes,
case.
just in case. All those in favor? Thank you. Motion passes. I apologize, folks. 7B, that's a boatload of things. You want to go through those, John, or do you want Daryl to do that?
Daryl, I've got to pull them up one by one. Can you talk about these more expeditiously than me or Patrick? Or do we want to?
Well, like 46310 is kind of a cleanup. There's a bunch of stuff in that rule that's antiquated. We're pulling it out and putting it in new rule 46315. Is that right, Patrick? Okay. 463.9 is this is another one of those efforts where we're trying to expand the types of degrees that can be accepted for a school psych, for the school psych license. This is a good example of whenever I said you take your rules and you think outside the box. Here we've got a statute that says you got to have a degree that's psych in nature, historically, we've always said, well, it's got to be like a psychology degree or a school psych degree. But here the board took a look at this and said, well, what if somebody comes in with, say, a counseling degree, but they can go through a certificate program that will teach them how to be a school psych or an LSSP? Could we let them in? And we were like, why not? Yes, we can. So this is one where they're kind of allowing some cross-pollination between the boards. They're saying, look, we'll take a related degree as long as you go through one of these training programs, you get this certification, that's going to be good enough to get you in. And so I thought that was a pretty creative way to do it. And so this is an
So-
example of that.
For example, I have a business degree, and if I applied, I would, and it's not even a master's. Let's just say I had an MBA for a second. We're not talking about accepting an MBA.
Right.
It needs to be related. So we're not opening the floodgates, but this is one of those scenarios where somebody obviously has the skill set and the foundation to go be a school psychologist versus sending them back for a whole new master's degree. We've created an on-ramp.
Smart.
And it doesn't lower the standards because you still have to have like the required coursework and all that. It just doesn't knock people out from the beginning because of the degree type.
Because of the route taken. It gets them
Yeah,
to the same place, but we
Yeah.
don't care how you get, we care less now about how you got there.
Yes.
I don't know if you care less, but you. But
We don't
yes,
care what vehicle they drove in.
right.
They
Part
got,
of,
they,
part of the problem too on this is that there's just such a shortage of LSSP programs actually in Texas. So it's really actually, it's tough because you've got to go through that route into one of those programs, channel through, and then if you didn't do it or missed something, then you would literally have to almost start back over again that entire year of all that training and supervision. So it kind of helps piece some of that together as well, to like if somebody's missing something or to get basically to get everything that they need in an alternate way if possible. So it's trying to help.
Look at steps. Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. That's great.
And then in
Mark and John, are y'all getting pushback on this?
Not on this rule, not that I've seen. Have you, John?
no.
Okay.
It's just one of those things too, where Texas Tech does this. This is one instance where, I mean, in many cases and in many, areas of regulations are playing catch up with reality out there. This is sort of a response to a university, from what we can see, who is doing something good. And we're really, I think, hot on their tails with making the regulation, match our educational system, which is rare. And I'm going to toot our horn for doing it. There's a lot more to do, but I'm very happy with this.
Daryl, is this related to what we were dealing with the evaluation of the degrees out of Tech?
Yeah, it somewhat is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not quite the same animal, but it's in that ballpark, yes.
Okay. All right. So we have a certain amount of familiarity with the overall issue then.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
46311 is some cleanup. That's psych board. They had a rule. It wasn't the same as what social work had, the 5-year moving window. But we called it the gap rule. It never operated the way everybody thought it would, or the way it looked on paper. The board always granted exceptions to it. It never kept anybody out. And so we got to thinking about, well, why do we even have it? If we're always granting exceptions to it, it doesn't do anything. And so we got rid of that. So that's going to be a big help. 463, what's the next one? 12 is a change to our temporary license rule to make that easier on staff. Right now, it's a nightmare to administer that thing. And so we're changing it so that it becomes very easy to administer. Instead of having somebody check in with us every time they want to deliver services under a temporary license, they have to do it before each time now. Now we're just going to say, look, at the end of the year, at the end of your license, you tell us when you did it, and that will be fine. That's the way it's handled under SIPAC. So we just duplicated that effort here, or that method here. And then lastly, 463.
Yeah. If I can say something there, it hadn't been a problem. So this is one of those things where identifying something in the rule that's not a problem, and let's streamline it.
Yeah. And it's a huge time suck on staff whenever we have to do that. And it's very aggravating for the licensee to have, especially because lawyers are bad about changing dates and then they have to come back to us and go, well, hey, the goofy lawyers did this. And it's just a big hassle. So then 463.35 is just the professional development rule, the CE rule for psychologists. So everybody's familiar with that because it's pretty well a standardized rule now across all the disciplines. And that's it.
I did want to mention one thing about that though. On, I guess it's G7, if you kind of see, to kind of go to our conversation earlier about, access to care. I do really like what we've done here in terms of providing supervision to supervise these delivering psychological services to individuals residing in those rural mental health discipline, health professional shortage areas. Basically, a supervisor can actually use 20 hours of that supervision as CE continuing education credit, which I think is awesome because it does create motivation to do it. It creates a form of incentive for that supervision and to help in those rural areas where we're so underserved. So I really like this.
I love that.
If I can piggyback on that, I mean, supervision is not necessarily the same as teaching, but it requires that, I imagine, that teaching element, and teaching is the fullest form of learning in just about anything. So I agree.
Yeah, and I know from experience with my own company, and we're in a lot of different regions, just very, very tough to get to regions, and just having the ability to have someone that can over that work and be there as a resource consultation from all the different perspectives of what supervision is. In training, I think it's great to create that incentive.
I agree. I've seen that in the dentistry field where I work, and it's extremely effective. It's especially effective for people who have learning disabilities, I found. So it's really, really great.
So if there are no questions or discussion, I would move adoption of these en masse.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by raising your hand. Brian, I think I see a finger. Yeah, I saw it. Okay, we're done. Thank you.
Daryl, thanks for laying that out. I've got my iPad here, and I was just going to be really cumbersome with that. So thank you for the help laying that out.
Okay, items 8, the Texas State Board Examiners of Professional Calendars. You've got a bunch of stuff going on. Would anybody like to speak to that?
Okay, it's not as bad as it looks, but that first one, 681.35 under A and lowercase I, informed consent. This was kind of the brainchild of Dr. Taylor. So if he will give everyone just a little bit of background on it, you can see why we are tackling it right now.
Thank you, Mr. Robert. Essentially, we've had a lot of complaints from therapists as far as mobility throughout the state when they choose to work for other entities that are much larger, that have more of an employer-employee relationship versus a private practice setup, that there's concerns about their ability to be held responsible for what's in the informed consent or how they write the informed consent. We also took this time to restructure the informed consent, which I think Patrick can elaborate on a little bit, to match up more with our friends at LMFT and social work and psychology. So that's a little bit more clear. Essentially, the idea is this gives more freedom for the therapist to work at other places where they don't have control over the practice policies, the procedures, and to really kind of drive the point home. I think one of my first or second complaint hearings when I joined the LPC board like 7 years ago, there was a young lady who was an LPC I at the time when they were interns, and the I was printed on her badge at the hospital where she worked. And I don't know, she got sideways with somebody and they filed a complaint against her because, we weren't allowed to use the term I. And it seemed so silly because she doesn't have control over the badge printing system. I mean, she showed a good faith effort to do her job the best of her ability, right? So we dismissed that complaint, but I think that's kind of what we're looking at, especially as we move more into a global environment. as we move closer to a counseling compact, where we're going to see more therapists that are rather than electing to start their own practice or to join a practice, end up working for a company or a larger setup. So that was kind of the idea behind it. Questions for Patrick? Anything you want to add?
No, the only other part I would add is the rest of the remaining rules. So all of the rules came from 681-41. And when we added the new provision that Dr. Taylor talks about, it made a 6-page rule even longer. So what we did was break all of that rule into sort of intuitive sub rules. And so there's a rule on informed consent, there's a rule on records, there's a rule on billing, on conflicts. And so those were all parsed out into smaller separate rules. So if you had a question about billing or records or informed consent, you would go to that specific rule instead of the really long 6-page general rule that was there. And so that general rule will still exist, but it'll be significantly shorter. And so substantively, those rules are not changing. They're just being broken up in a more manageable, accessible fashion, I think, for the licensees and the general public.
It sounds like that would be more manageable for the
Mhm,
licensees.
yeah.
Great.
The Texas Register makes fun of us whenever we start getting into the double letters on a rule, double A, double B. We catch a little flack over that.
And the last thing to add is the only other changes too in this A8 on the agenda are in 681-52. That's making a corresponding change based on what we're changing. There's just some number changing that has to be made in that rule. And then 681-205 is the schedule of sanctions. And if we change the rule numbering, the numbering on that schedule of sanctions has to change. So all those are done. It's just to line up on those rule changes.
Sure. Is there
Yeah,
any-
this is, Patrick is using this opportunity to make the rules more accessible, to make them less confusing. We believe that this makes it easier to find since it's such a encompassing general rule, dividing it up like this makes it more accessible to everyone because we're dividing it up by kind of a specific topic area as opposed to just overall, here's all the play nice rules. Is that a good way to put it?
It's perfect.
Yes, Dr. Taylor proposed one little paragraph, and because no good deed goes unpunished, Patrick took the opportunity to break out a 6-page rule into a bunch of different subsections. And Patrick, if I didn't know better, I'd accuse you of getting paid by the hour.
If only.
So that's the background on that. Thanks, Patrick, for your work on this. It's a logical change. I think it makes our rules more accessible, more effective.
Thank
What
you.
is your hourly rate, Patrick?
Never enough.
You can't afford him. You can't afford him, Mark.
Do I hear a motion to approve? Now, did we say, wait, where are we? Did we say A and B, or did we just do A?
Just A, right?
Just
Just
now.
AI to A7.
I would make that motion, Chair.
Thank you. May I
I'll
have a
second.
thank you, Dr. Taylor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. Ryan, yeah, there you are. Thanks. The
Thank
motion.
you, everyone.
8B,
8B is the culmination of our year-long effort at taking a look at our CE rules. And I think through back and forth, listening to the public, talking with the other mental health boards, tweaking with staff, we have arrived at what is a pretty good product. It was approved by the LPC board when we met a week and a half ago or so. This is our finish line for the changes for the LPCs. Daryl, anything specific I need to add to that?
No, sir, that covers it.
Okay. Thanks everyone for your work on this. And I'm including the public, and I'm including our stakeholders who, when they saw something that they didn't like, they did let us know. end result is we made a better rule change after hearing from them. We heard from Texas Medical Association, Texas Counseling Association, even our former chair Christopherson weighed in to let us know how he felt about the changes. So thanks everyone. This is a collaborative effort. I like what we came up with. I think it is testimony to the system working the way it was intended to do.
Thank you so much. Do I have a motion to approve item 8B?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Great, thank you. All in favor signify by saying, raising your hand. Thank you so much. Passes unanimously.
Okay.
The next is item 9A. There are no rules for consideration under the topic for proposed rule changes. There is item 9B, possible adoption of the general standards of practice. Brian or Asia, do one of you want to speak to that?
I'll, excuse me, I'll defer to Daryl to speak to it. I am limited on technology and bandwidth in and out.
Okay,
This rule really brings the social work rule into alignment with the family code. There was a little bit of I don't want to say conflict, but friction between this rule and how the family code operated in terms of who has the right to consent to social work services for a child. And so this change brings the rule into alignment with the family code.
Ms. Rogers, is there anything you want to add? No, okay. And then if there's no other discussion, may I have a motion to approve item 9B?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
And I'll second that motion.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by raising your hands. Motion passes. Okay, wow, we moved through rulemaking very quickly. We're learning. Item 10 is reports from member boards regarding current or future issues that might impact the professions or the agency's regulatory functions. Is there anyone who has something that they'd like to mention or bring forward? Anything that we need to look at as a board?
Chair
feel-
Canseco, this is Brian,
Yeah.
I'll briefly tell y'all that on Thursday of this week, we'll be having a town hall meeting open to the public to address two issues. One, we're going to hear from the public concerning the ASWB licensure exam and issues related to that. And then the second half of the town hall, through standardization, we pulled the approval for continuing education units for individuals who provide supervision to interns. And we've had some backlash from that. So we're going to hear from folks concerning that as well. But those two issues will be on February 2nd.
Thank you. That's a great move. Anybody else? Okay.
I think from psychology, we covered everything. Everything we're working on right now, we've already covered in the meeting today.
Terrific.
So
I
let's
will say
continue.
we are going to do an insights over lunch hour. That's coming up in February with Dr. Lambden, John, myself, to discuss the role of the board, the role of the psychology board and BHEC board, just to kind of give information and then allow questions, any kind of questions that want to be asked about those issues, anything related to the board. And then we're going to try to start having topics that are somewhat board related going forward. But this is going to be more of a general overview, insights over lunch. But we're excited about that. It's going to be the first one. So anyone in the public is welcome to join.
That's great. You know, are we ever thinking about doing that at some point? I think that professionals generally have a good idea of what BHEC is doing, but we've come a long way now.
It's been a while. I've done them in the past. It's been a while since I've done one.
Mhm.
I need to do one that's more of an educative outreach for the new CE rules that everybody has adopted. Now that LPC has done it, we're ready, I think, to have a agency-wide CE discussion, kind of make sure everybody knows, hey, these are the changes that have been adopted. this is how you comply with it now, that type of thing. So,
I was gonna say too, on our, I think you get 1 CE credit, right? Isn't that right, Daryl?
yeah, whatever y'all decide on, no more than one is typically what it works out to.
Okay,
Oh, sorry, Chair Conseco, real quick. I would add that in our previous LPC board meeting, we are getting some feedback from our Texas LPCs and from our stakeholder organizations that the rate at which we are doing rule changes can at times be rather confusing. And I think that it's kind of, it's partially a product based on how the system works in between handing a change back and forth between the member board and up here to BHEC and back and all the opportunities for public comment. This was the first that I'd heard of this, and we're always striving to be responsive to our membership. We're striving to be effective and make calculated decisions, be clear on what we do, and be very open with the public. Has anybody else run into this to where basically there's some expression of kind of confusion, expression of frustration with the amount of rule changes or the pace at which they're undertaken? Because with Dr. Taylor and I, we want to be responsive to our members, but we would not want to do so at the expense of not making an appropriate change when it was needed to do so. So has anybody else dealt with this? Yeah, I'd like to ask John, because he's in a similar position to me, being the public member chair. Has this come up with you guys, and do you get accused of not moving in a logical manner, or just kind of tackling so many things that it almost becomes overwhelming, it almost becomes confusing, and then you end up with the opposite of the intended effect? It kind of creates more confusion instead of remedying a problem. So that's kind of what I would want to ask about, because I always like to know what you guys are doing and what you think works.
anybody?
I clicked off there for a second. Was that directed at psychology?
Just in
Or public
general.
member chair?
Just in general, John, do you sometimes hear that you're making too many rule changes, that it's creating the opposite of what you wanted in your efforts to clear things up, or to make a good improvement? You're doing the opposite.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do you handle it? Did you make any changes?
I've heard from detractors at times. No, but I think generally, I'm trying to think about, I don't think I haven't heard as much about doing too much. I've heard more about bad ideas, and I do take it to heart, and I think the board takes it to heart. In our meeting in the Capitol, and after the immediacy after Uvalde, I forget what some of them were now, but we had lots of ideas, and some of them, we were roundly told by all parties why it was a bad idea, and it was explained, this is a bad idea, and here's why. Have you thought about this? I'm like, yeah, it's a bad idea. Yeah, that's good. Let's not do that. So in that regard, yeah, we have. But I think that change is always hard, and we're going to carry on because we have a mission to do here.
And I think that probably I've heard a little bit about the pace of change. Every time I turn around, something is changing. Well, we know that happens when you're setting something new up. But at some point, I think things will level off, and that's usually my response.
Okay.
Janine?
And just to kind of, thank you for recognizing me, just to kind of address that, I can tell you that part of that feeling I can understand, because it's like rule change, but really it's not I think that education with membership during your day, we call ours Day at the Dome, that we not only talk about things and the issues that are in front of us and in front of our mental health field as a whole, but we also kind of really talk about how does the legislature work? And what does it mean when you get these rule changes? Because just like what you guys did, yeah, you had all these rule changes, but basically it was really just to kind of identify how it was going to be addressed. Instead of in a block, it's a bullet form. So we really kind of try and educate our membership a lot on what does this actually mean when you get this? What does it mean and how do you get your rules? What does it mean and how do you read through them? And sometimes I feel like that's helpful because a lot of times our members don't even understand why this feels so cumbersome. That a lot of times our hands are tied based on how the legislature has set us up and when we are making changes. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but we do that. And then I think we've adopted, and Dr. Skoma, you can correct me on this always. We've done now 2 open town hall meetings, and we have another one slated. So we're trying to do a town hall meeting once a quarter to address any kind of questions or concerns that our membership might have out there.
That's good to know.
Over lunch. So it's kind of a lunch thing. And they're working very well. Yeah, they're wonderful.
Mhm.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, if there's nothing else from anyone, I think we can move on to 11, recommendations for agenda items for the next council meeting. And for my part, I definitely like to hear what boards have responded to our request regarding the special report.
Okay.
Anybody else? If anything comes up, yeah, Janine?
I think that we voted to go to the try method. And so how will that be, how will that message be distributed out there to people? That instead of going 4 times a year, we're just going to go 3.
Well, I can send out a mass email to everyone, if y'all would prefer that. And of course, we list our dates out, 2 years. Right now, all our meeting dates are listed through August. So with this, I'll now add all the way through 2025 now on the website, so they'll be able to see. But I can send out a mass email too. I don't know that anybody really plans their calendar around our meeting dates,
And they're on the website.
other than the EDs.
Well,
for the state
I don't
association.
know why they wouldn't. I mean, it's so entertaining. No, I just wanted to know when that gets updated to our board stuff, just so that we can let people know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It'll be on the website this week.
Dr. Cartwright?
Just a question on that, on the triannual, that is tough to say, on the triannual schedule. When does that actually go into effect in terms of like the meeting dates? I know you said like end of 20, is that going to go where we're already scheduled out to, or is that going to take the place of some already pre-scheduled meetings?
No, it will not take the place of any currently scheduled meetings. It will not begin until September 1st of 2023. That's when fiscal year 2024 begins. And then it'll go for 2 years. So once I get those dates set and on the website, I'll send the link to you guys. That way y'all can see, hey, this is when they're set, and you can block it off on your calendar.
Yeah, Daryl, the first meeting would be October 24th, 2023.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'll just point out, if we're looking at a triumvirate, we already have Mark and Anthony. So if there's an Octavian out there, we're set for that.
Okay, good.
History majors unite.
Oh my gosh, all right. I think we're gonna like you, Dr. Skoma. So if there's nothing else, then it's time for for general public comments. You've got your chat box open so that you can call.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you can lay out the rules, because I'm sure I'll say it incorrectly.
Okay. All right. So anyone wishing to give public comment, I'll need for you to raise your hand using the raise hand feature in the Zoom meeting. And if you're calling in, I don't see any callers right now, but if you're a telephone caller, you'll wait till the end and then I will call on you individually, and you can just use *6 to unmute yourself. But we'll begin with Sandra Martin, All right, Ms. Martin, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know how I get first all the time. I got in really late today. I wanted to comment anyway on the CE broker, and Steve's comment toward the end added something to that. And I think the waters have not quieted yet regarding the new CEUs. You probably don't hear them, but people like me hear them quite a bit. People are not well-versed, and I'm having to update severely because well-versed has been many years ago, but they're not well-versed in legal language. They're not well-versed in looking at a paper full of numbers that come in threes in the beginning, and then there's a dot, and then there are four more numbers after that. And then there's just this massive rules that, and their eyes just kind of glaze over. I don't think you realize how many people, and it's not your fault, it's ours, how many people don't even know how to get to the Texas Register spaces, the places there. They don't know. And it's too complicated for them to work into their timetable. And I was going to mention in regard to the CE broker, this is going to be another addition on the very good, I think, very good CE rules. But we've just finished them, and now we're doing something else with the CE rules. And people are going to ask, why are they doing this for free? What are they getting from it? Because a company doesn't do things for free if they're not getting something from it. So they're going to be asking that question, and they're going to want to know, where are our documents going? Are they going into a computer and then shredded, or are they being filed somewhere to use us for advertising because our names and our degrees are on those? And I know it sounds really suspicious, but people are suspicious. So they're going to want to know, why are we going outside the circle of BHEC? And are we going even further outside the state of Texas? How far are our documents going, and why? And why are they doing it for free? And why are we going back to the CE rules again? Which, you know, if you sit and listen to the meetings, you understand that, but most people don't sit and listen to the meetings. So just a word of caution, the waters on that are not quiet yet, and they're going to stir a little bit when the CE broker comes up. So it's something you should be prepared for. Personally, I think we should be very grateful for the work you do. It was Dr. Taylor, when asked if he would please read the rules before he voted on it. And his response was, I've been reading rules for free for 7 years. So it's just, I just wanted to make you aware that when the CE broker comes up, there are going to be questions, and they are frustrated with the masses of rules that if they could read them better and had time, they would do that and had some understanding. So thank you very much. You're appreciated, and you do good work, and we thank you for it.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra.
Just as what Sandra had pointed out, I'm gonna just share my screen real quick here to show people. For those people that are having trouble understanding the,
I think you have to slide it to the right.
no, it's,
see it?
can everybody see the BHEC website here where I'm scrolling up and down? Okay. What I have done here on this, this is the online renewal system page. It's this link right here. You click on this link and it takes you to this page. It's where you access the online licensing system. If you scroll down, what I've done is I've summarized all the continuing education requirements under the new rule. I've also put a link directly to your continuing education rule. Now that it's one rule, your boards used to have multiple rules. It's now one rule. I've put a link to that one rule so you can go through and actually see direct source if you want to. But I've also put a summary of all the continuing education requirements. Try to do it in plain English. Look, guys, I'm a lawyer, so plain English is a second language to me. You're just going to have to deal with it and bear with it. But the one thing, I haven't done the LPCs yet because it wasn't adopted until today. But the other boards, psych, social work, and MFT, y'all should have kind of a plain English summarization of the continuing education requirements there, if you're looking for it.
Thank you. That's great.
Kind of figured that problem would rear its head. All right. Mr. Gray, do you have public comments you'd like to give? Donald Gray?
Yes, sir, real briefly. Well, first I wanted to say thank you guys so much at the board for streamlining the licensing and renewal process. I'm an LMFT. I was first licensed in 2014. And I had a terrible experience getting my initial license. As contrasted by October of last year, when I renewed my license, even getting fingerprinted, adding that to the process was so easy and fast. It was just a matter of a few days when my license was renewed. And I don't know what you did, but you did something great. And we out here in the world really appreciate that. Also, I'm here also representing the Christian Counselors of Texas, just so you know that. This is my first BEC meeting, and I just want to tell you guys, I love you, man. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Kathleen Mills, you have public comments you'd like to give?
I do, sir. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, members of the council. My name is Kathleen Mills. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor. I'm a certified employee professional and a certified integrative mental health professional here in Frisco, Texas. I'm a CEO at Lifetree Counseling Center and co-founder of both PracticeMentors.us and the Association for Mental Health Professionals.org. I am very encouraged and honestly pleasantly surprised that the council is asking the questions needing to be asked as per subchapter B, as you reviewed item A at today's agenda. Today, you boldly discussed what is the problem, where is the empirical proof data with empirical numbers that something needs to be added or changed. Another question, what could be the significant harm done prior to this new proposed rule change or change to the public and licensees? What is the quantitative data that is driving or speeding up the needed change? What are the financial repercussions to the licensee? What is the hurry? Why or why not? You also paid attention to the state of Texas and gave yourselves great permission to take a look at our state sovereignty issue. As an example only, there were the same questions myself and many other licensees brought up, both to BHEC and the LPC board regarding the newly passed CE rules. It was unanimously passed last year in rapid form. Our new CE rules for supervisors has increased from 33% required courses to 67%, of which 50% now must come from an improved list, despite denying an improved list. But today, you did in public forum that all heard today, as per how subchapter B should go. So I applaud you for this prudent type of conversation. These rules are specified in subchapter B, and you did exactly that. Us licensees need to see transparency and adherence to subchapter B, both council and their respective boards on a regular basis when discussing changes in the rule book. And the council delivered this at today's meeting. My point, you get to push back, and you did. You have nothing to lose and all to gain. My prayer going forward now is that each meeting, whether it is council and each respective board, incorporate these questions when reviewing new rule changes or something else as per 881.20 through 881.21. I thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mills.
Right, Mr. Saleh?
Sala.
Sala, excuse me.
Yes.
Yes,
No
sir.
problem.
You have public comments you'd like to give?
I do. My name is Kia Sala, and I'm a licensed specialist in school psychology. I do want to start by thanking the council for all the hard work that you do and the thoughtful deliberation that goes on during all of these meetings and the time that you give to serve in this capacity. So I do appreciate it. I did want to echo and add some of the concerns as it relates to CE broker and the discussion, particularly as pointed out by Ms. Martin around the idea of information and access. While it sounds exciting to hear about a product that is free to members and free to the boards, it is my experience with a lot of technology that if you are not the customer who pays, you are the product being sold. And so I would hope that the council is able to ask some questions about the security of personal information by the members that are be required to submitting data to them, what information they're asking for, and whether or not that information is sold to third parties, because I would have some concerns about being mandated to use a service that would then turn around and sell my personal information to outside third parties and other interests. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Mr.
sir.
Sala.
Ms. Kimball, did you have public comments you'd like to give?
I do. Thank you, Executive Council, for all that you do, and for the members of the LPC board, Christopher and Stephen, appreciate you guys. I wanted to speak to the oral exam and this influence that the ASPPB had to blindside Daryl, I guess, who was present. It concerned me, and here's the words, the buzzwords that concern me. Equity, I'm not a fan. Mandate, not a fan. And that the board was made up of Canada and other foreign regulators. Not a fan. This is a state license that we have acquired, earned actually, and would prefer state regulation rather than the long arm of the federal government continuing to interfere with what we do, trying to bring mental health to people. And that is can be demonstrated in this good faith estimate. We're lumped in with the medical field, but we do an internship and we're not called doctors. And so I'm just really wanting someone to bulldog for us. Daryl, when you go to these meetings, John, you seem like you like to bring a lot of things up, because I don't want my license to be subject to, at a federal level when I am working state level. The CEUs, again, if I pay for 24 CEUs, I want them all to count. That's my money, not your money. And I want to take the classes I want. So I'm again, that part of the CEUs, I'm not a fan of. Cybersecurity, very important point for you guys to all start considering. Our licenses and our addresses are on your database. So it gives us exposure that some people, we're dealing often with unstable people, and it could pose potential danger to us. And one thing Stephen had brought up, the council, the compact, moving in the right direction, because then we have a stronger force to serve in crisis and emergency situations. And we can also perhaps have a certification to prove basic competencies so that at a particular time we can cross those lines. And I do think in many, many instances, we should be compensated with, well, there's no state tax here, but if the federal government wants to use us as their armed force, then that there should be a tax deduction or something for frontline mental health providers. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you
Ms.
so
Mason.
much, Rhonda.
Dr. Sarter, do you have public comments you'd like to give?
Yes, I do. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Terry Ann Sarter, and I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor, counselor educator, and the liaison to the Behavioral Health Executive Council for the Texas Counseling Association. Additionally, I am grateful for the opportunity to serve on the BHEC Rules and Standardization Task Force. TCA appreciates the efforts taken by BHEC, the executive directors, licensing board members, and the staff to keep us updated on the new tools being utilized for submitting and tracking public comments, the current legislative session, and other issues that may impact the rulemaking processes and our roles as we continue to support the mental health needs of Texans. Additionally, we continue to support the efforts of the Texas State Board of Examiners of Professional Counselors in ensuring board rules are reviewed on a regular basis. We acknowledge it is a license holder responsibility to stay abreast of the current rules and we continue to support the requirement of the jurisprudence exam. As Stephen Hollabauer mentioned earlier, there are some concerns of increased frequency of changes which may lead to confusion over which rules are current. Due to the frequency of the rule reviews and the shortage of mental health professionals, we appreciate the comments made in the January 20th meeting and the consideration of posting a graphic for informational purposes that illustrates the processes and the timeline for rule changes. Additionally, it may be helpful for the licensing boards to address the finalized changes in the recorded segments insights over the lunch hour. The suggestion for soliciting comments were also well received, which Daryl made earlier in this meeting as well. License holders find that these types of informational sessions are extremely helpful, and we are thankful for BHEC for the mental health licensing boards and hosting these sessions. The combinations of these things can better protect the public and the license holders while ensuring quality mental health services are provided to Texans. Additionally, we appreciate the diligence of the members of BHEC, the Rules and Standardization Task Force, and all licensing boards in working toward having consistencies across licensing board rules. This will assist in providing clarity for duly licensed mental health professionals and the staff members of BHEC and the individual licensing boards. Lastly, we would like to thank the members of the Texas State Board of Examiners of Professional Counselors for committing to attend and present at the TASES Midwinter Conference on March 2nd and 3rd in Georgetown, Texas. Much like TCA commented in the meeting on January 20th, our members do enjoy hearing from you and engaging with you. Again, we appreciate and respect all the hard work of our volunteer boards. Thank you for listening, and we appreciate your time, dedication, and efforts.
Thank you, Dr. Sartor.
Thank you, Dr. Sartor.
Mr. Francis, you have public comments you'd like to give?
Yes, my name is Will Francis, and I'm the Executive Director for the National Association of Social Workers Texas chapter. And as always, I just want to thank BHEC for their hard work, your rules, your support of our boards. A couple areas I'd just like to raise some concerns about. One, the CE tracker. Like others, I have concerns about whether that's, I know there's a free thing out there, but I worry that always leads to something that becomes a paid subscription. And if this is the best use of dollars, since as Mr. Spinks shared, the number of people who actually fail the audits or are delinquent in this area is pretty minimal. So that's an area I'd just love to look at more. The other bigger concern I have, though, is BHEC moving from 4 meetings to 3 meetings without taking any public comment or without really doing any sort of diligence with the boards themselves. It really seems a cart before the horse process. So many people that I know of rely upon board meetings to share disciplinary or go through the disciplinary process or the application process. Rules are vitally important. And while I know that you have the ability to call an emergency meeting, I would think that would only be used in very extreme circumstances. And so you're essentially pushing each board's rules back through even further. And there's already this extra process of having to go through the board, having to go through BHEC, Texas Register multiple times. I just would have thought you all would have at least sought public comment on this, or at least worked with an understanding that the public really expects a quicker time frame through this whole process, and quarterly meetings really allow for that. So I just have a lot of concerns that this was done so quickly, and it was done without really any input, and it was only done by members of BHEC. So that's something I hope is at least looked at in the future, and that there is tracking done on what it means for rules and what it means for discipline and applications as well. And I really hope boards actually explore this a whole lot more. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Will. Mr. Crum, do you have public comments you'd like to give?
Oh, I certainly would. I appreciate it, sir. Name is Philip Crum. I'm the other co-founding member of PracticeMentors.us and the Association for Mental Health Professionals. I've got 6 comments for you, and I'm viewing this things today through the lens of my New Year's revelation here to view the glass as half full all the time as much as possible. So I've got 6 points for you. Number 1, good on Daryl Spinks for the updated and streamlined rules and comments initiative, and the low number of pending complaints, and the listening session idea, which is long overdue and very, very welcome. The low number of pending complaints alone is worth contract renewal and a nice raise all by itself. So thank you for all of that. Number two, I'm glad to hear, as Kathleen said earlier, I'm also very glad to hear that the council members using phrases and questions like, what problems does this solve? Is it evidence-based? There's no data to point to support the change. In the face of mental health crisis, we sure as heck don't need any more obstacles. Or how much is this going to cost licensees? Those are fantastic places to begin a discussion. I wish it had been more dominant last year in those discussions, but water under the bridge, and here we are. Number three, some really good questions from Steve Halbauer and Chris Taylor regarding the CE broker topic. They seemed to know what I was thinking at the time and asked all the same questions, and I appreciate that. It's well done. An online method for pre-renewal approval is a great idea, as long as it doesn't present competition to the free market providers who are also trying to do the same thing. Now, I'm not so much worried about whether the information is sold to somebody else. That can be contracted. I'm worried about whether that's the board and the council's place to be competing with the market at all. Now, point number four, and this is also a very good discussion on this point, to the earlier discussion of streamlining. We're back to definitions, aren't we? That's the world we live in. If streamlining means lowering the bar for licensure to put more bodies in the field, then no. But if it means removing unnecessary regulation and hurdles as they fall under the board and council's purview, then absolutely that should be done. I think that's being done. And I'm really happy to say that that's actually where the conversation today during this meeting went. So good for that, because over-regulation of the profession is the biggest inhibitor to promoting new interest in the profession. Point number five, I'm loving the common sense, big picture points of view from Anthony Scoma, even if the bow tie seems to be a requirement for the seat. Number six, to Chris Taylor's excellent comment about matching grad students and supervisors, that is one of the main things we're tackling through the Association of Mental Health Professionals, through our grad student outreach program and some other tools. I don't think it's a council or board's purpose or directive to do that, competing with market players attempting to do just that. But he's right in that the solution does need to exist, and I'm out of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crum. You gave us a laugh.
Mr.
And
Gomez.
this bow tie is a one-off.
Mr. Gomez, do you have public comments you'd like to give?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Name is Ruben Gomez. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor in the state of Texas and the BHEC liaison for the Texas Association of Counselor Education and Supervision. TASIS values the commitment of BHEC, the executive directors, licensing board members, and staff that continuously seek to improve our profession and public safety. We would like to express appreciation for the upcoming proposed rule link on the main page of BHEC. This will make things much easier and accessible to keep LPCs well informed. And Daryl, we appreciate the updates to the new rules on the website that you were showing us here just a minute ago. We would like to express a thank you to the TSB EPC for dedicating time to attend and present at our conference, the TASIS Midwinter Conference on March 2nd and 3rd in Georgetown, Texas. We valued and appreciated your contributions last year and look forward to our members having the ability to connect with you again. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. I think that's it.
And no telephone attendees with that, Madam Chair, no more. Dr. Felderhoff. Dr. Felderhoff, do you have public comments you'd like to give?
I do, thank you. First of all, I want to thank all the members today for their time and effort they spend in support of our licensing boards and thereby our respective professions. I'm a licensed clinical social work supervisor and really just want to take this opportunity to ask that we continue to look at issues with the licensing complaint process for our board. I know that when BHEC took over a couple of years ago, there were many areas that were really behind and that we've made tremendous efforts to get caught up in all areas. But over the last year, not only have I had some individual supervisees, but I've also worked with other social workers throughout the state who continue to be negatively impacted by the delays in processing complaints. And working with licensees to resolve those expeditiously. And so I hope that through our board's continued work that we can work to really update and expedite those processes so that social workers who have pending complaints against them have an opportunity not only to be heard, but continue to grow as social workers and develop and have an opportunity to practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Felderhoff.
All right, with that, Madam Chair, that concludes public comment.
Thank you so much. And then if there's no other business before the council, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Y'all want to just stay here for a couple more hours?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Wow. That
So
was,
moved.
and is there a second? Oh, that was two. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Right.
Aye.
Thanks,
Thank all
everybody.
so much. I sure appreciate you, and I know we all do. And thanks to
y'all.
the staff.
Thank you.
Can't
Thanks,
hear.
everybody.
Thank you.
Chair Conseco,
Yes.
would you be open if I were to come down to San Antonio sometime to sit at lunch, just hear your heart for this board and kind of